All right, cameras on, ready to go. Okay.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brighton Area Schools Board of Education meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sacramento, roll call, please.
Mr. Storm,
Present.
Mr. Conley,
Here.
Mr. Trombley,
Here.
Mrs. Marks,
Here.
Dr. Krebs, here, Ms. Reed,
Here.
Mr. Myers.
Here.
Approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion? Moved by Dr. Krebs,
Support.
support by Ms. Reed. Any discussion? Okay, what?
I'd like to make a do that. I'd like to make an addition to the agenda tonight. I'd like a motion that we put on that we reimburse two parents $50,000 for legal expenses and just put on the agenda for a vote tonight. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion to amend the agenda to reimburse two parents $50,000 in legal fees. Is there, okay, motion by Mr. Conley, supported by Mr. Trombley. Any discussion? Okay, all those.
I have some discussion. This has been carrying on for months, and I think it needs to be resolved. And I believe that the request was made through administration, and then it was sent for an opinion. And then the opinion, it was never sent back to the board for any decision on this at all. I think it needs to be addressed by the board. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I would just, offer support to what John, his motion. I also feel that the subject that he's speaking to is something that, we should discuss as a board, and it is something that should be addressed by the collective board and not something that's done outside of the board with administration. So I just want to offer my support for his motion.
All right. Any further discussion?
I would like to propose that we table this motion until we get to past item number 7 on the board agenda.
Okay. So we have a second. So procedurally, Mr. Connolly, would you withdraw your motion to amend the agenda at this juncture and have a motion to table your, well, I guess procedurally would be a motion to table your motion to amend. So we would need a second on the motion to table your motion to amend. Is there a second to Ms. Reed's motion? All right. So we have a motion to table the motion to amend to be reconsidered immediately before the for action portion of the agenda. All right. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? All right, so that passes to table that, but we will still need now a vote on the pending motion to approve the agenda. Any further discussion?
On the agenda or John's motion?
John's motion is
amend the agenda.
tabled now.
You just comment where you said any further discussion. I want you to go to the next, I do have a question related to the broad agenda.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm referring to now.
Point of clarification.
Sure.
So there's just one quick administrative question related to the agenda is when I received Star's email and it referenced the Title IX update, and it also references in Section 7, closed session, I did see the reference to the Title IX documentation that was shared both in your update and then also in the package that we received. But I was wondering, as a board member, I'm not aware of why we are going into closed session this evening. And I don't know if I missed the communication, which I may have, but are any other board members aware of why there's an agenda item to go into closed session this evening?
It's communicated to all board members
When was it communicated, Roger?
2 or 3 times in board.
We would go into closed session
Yeah.
today?
Yes.
In board updates, it's obviously your choice, but the request
Your
is,
updates?
in my updates, yes.
Okay. So the recent updates stated that we would be going into closed session on 8/12
Yes.
for a specific matter.
Yes.
Our council is here.
He's here.
Okay. I don't know how I missed that. I read your updates.
It was a couple weeks ago.
Okay, and it said we'd go into closed session on 8/12.
That was the request. That's the request, so.
From who?
So the agenda is set by the executive committee.
I saw it's public. The letter is public, so I saw the letter.
No, the letter's not public.
It states in the letter that I read from our council that it's public.
No. What's in the
It said
packet,
it should not be.
This level's-
right, that letter's public.
That's what I'm referring to.
That's not what we're going into closed session about.
Okay,
That letter that's in the packet is part of Mr. Anastasov's Title IX update, item 8.
okay,
There's nothing in the packet that's relating to closed session.
okay. Well, I understand like the confidentiality around closed session
Right.
wouldn't be in a public packet.
Right, it's
But
not.
that's why I was confused, because I read the letter from our legal counsel on that particular item that stated this is not confidential, it's a public document.
Right.
Correct.
So just a point of clarification, when was the communication that's being referenced here sent out and from whom? Who was it sent from? Because I'm going to go back tonight and try to find it in my email.
The communication about us
Going
going to be
into
going into
closed
closed
session,
session, it was in the Dr. Outlaw's.
You can click this out. I'll pull it up. Just.
And I can talk to you afterwards if that, I mean, I'm not looking to hold up the whole meeting. I just,
I mean,
I can
you know,
see if
when
I
we
can
go
find
into
it here.
closed session, I read your updates.
Yeah.
and I guess for future reference, if any board member at any point in time when they get the agenda has a question about
Yeah.
why we're going, just text me. I mean, we text, I communicate. I'm happy to.
Yeah, I guess I'm bringing it up in this forum for the benefit of the public, because I think it's important for the public to know that if there was a formal communication specific to the subject matter that's on the agenda, that we will go into closed session for a particular subject. All I'm asking is, I'd like to see that. And if you're suggesting it was Dr. Outlaw's weekly update that he sends to us, that referenced that subject and stated we will go into closed session on 8/12 for that subject, perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So
So do you need, do you
It's
need?
your understanding, it's the update that Dr. Outlaw sent that is speaking to closed session on
That's,
this
that's
agenda.
telling us that we put this on the agenda to have, we as a board, in Dr. Outlaw's update, he informed the board as to that it's going to be on the agenda, that this is what we're coming forward with on tonight for a closed session.
Okay,
And that's why we invited legal counsel to be here for that
Okay.
purpose.
okay.
Yep.
All right. So I'll just work with you, Dr. Outlaw, afterwards and check that out.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Okay, that moves us into item 5, the superintendent report. Item A, future investment focus, group 1, transportation and security.
All right, let me get back to our list here. So with the board, we've had some conversation about future investments. Some of the things that might be, some of the costs that are coming up over the next 5 years. We've had conversation about operational costs. Tonight, one of the conversations from the board was to look at some of the areas that we're going to need to invest in as a school district over the next few years. So we've broken it into 3 groups. First group will start tonight. We're going to talk about transportation, about our bus fleet, and then we're also going to talk about a security investment. And then what we would like to do is at the next board meeting, we'd like to be able to bring in our tech folks to be able to talk about technology and the 5-year expenditures around technology thus far. We'd have Mr. Castile. We would have some people from the county that would be part of that. And then our third group might take a little bit longer on this. We could talk about this later, but we'll be talking about operations. So those are the 3 big focus groups. So tonight, let's see here. Liz, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to bring forward two people from our transportation department to talk to you a little bit about our bus fleet. So on the left, we have Laura Aluyan, who is Brighton's Director of Transportation. And to her right is a former Brighton Director of Transportation, and she runs transportation for the county, and that's Alice Johnson. So they're here tonight to talk about our bus fleet and answer any questions you might have about the fleet itself. So if you don't mind coming forward, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Okay, so he had us take a look at the bus fleet and replacement schedule. And so we put it together for you. The top part of it is current route buses. I think if you can you make it a little smaller?
Make this smaller?
No?
I can.
Oh, I thought it was you. I'm sorry.
Is that good?
Yeah, I was just showing those are the ones that are on the route. And if you keep going down, it'll show you. And then average age. And then these down here are spare buses. 3, 4, 6, 7. Those are the bus numbers. And then the yellow just kind of shows if we ran them for 12 years, when they would be replaced. So currently you guys have been replacing, in the last 3 years, you guys have been replacing like 2 to 3 buses a year, which seems to be working out good. It's right sizing the bus fleet, and the age used to be pretty old, right?
Mhm.
And now you guys are getting within the range of, it says 7.5, but that really got skewed because we just got 2 new ones in at the bottom of the list. So we look to do it, we look to run buses like 10 to 12 years. That's what we do. So we figure if you replace about 2 buses a year, and retire 2 buses a year, we'll be doing good. Now, this all changes a little bit though, based on population. Like if you guys continue to have a surge in population down in the southern area, we're gonna have to probably add routes. And so that'll change too, so. Does anybody have any comments on that?
Any questions
Any
about it?
questions on that?
I mean, this is pretty much the standard with all the districts in the county, as well as like Oakland County also. They try and stay at an average of 10 years if they can. 7 years, you guys are in great shape. There was a time where you were not in such great shape. And so over time, you guys have built the fleet back up, and I hope that it kind of stays that way so it doesn't end up being a huge expense. Like in Howell, they had to do like 6 buses in a row for several years because they kept putting it off. So I think you guys are doing great in this aspect. And if you build it into your budget, it's a lot less painful than trying to find the money later, right?
So how many buses do we have in our fleet that we currently operate?
30.
13?
30.
30 altogether,
30.
including sub buses.
Mhm.
And approximately how much a year do we spend in maintenance and repair on those 30 buses?
I'm not really sure about that. We can probably send you an email because our mechanic couldn't come tonight. But I think that because it's at 7.5 years, I think it's far less than what you've done in the past. A lot of them, for a few of them, their warranty work for the first few years anyway. So I would have to take kind of a deeper dive, and I don't have a problem doing that for you.
Well, I'm wondering, has anyone ever done the math to look at the cost of repair over the period year, over the 30 buses? You're
Mhm.
shaking your head, so you have?
Mhm.
So does it really make sense to continue to buy 2 buses a year? Or does it work out maybe cheaper to buy 3 buses a year and try to speed that cycle up so we're not incurring repair costs?
And I think we did. I think in previous years, you guys, Mike, didn't you get like 4 or something?
A couple years, yeah.
Yeah, for a
One
couple
year.
years in a row, when you guys could get lease buses, which they're almost unheard of now to even purchase,
This year, yeah.
that allowed you guys to get like 4 buses as opposed to 2.
I
So-
understand that, but
Mhm.
I'm asking us a very specific question, I
Okay.
think, and I think there could be an answer to it, right?
Yeah.
And you guys are in charge of transportation.
Right.
So that's why I'm asking the question. So is that something you can get back to us with?
100%, yep.
Or you'll let us know?
Yep.
And then the next question I have is, in the maintenance garage itself,
Mhm.
I'm assuming that moving forward with maintenance issues and depending on what we're going to do with millages and things, I'm under the impression that there's probably a lot of things in that garage that need to be fixed and repaired. Is that correct?
I don't know about fixed and repaired, a little bit of updates, and then there's like some floor hoists or joists or what are they?
They're hoists.
The hoist.
But they've been safety inspected. They're getting older, granted. It might
Do
be
they all
something.
work? Do all the floor hoists work in there?
Yes,
Yes.
Every
Yes,
floor
two
hoist
sides.
works in the bus garage.
there's 3, yes, and then there's one
No, I'm
flat.
asking the floor hoists in the bus garage, they all work. You're telling me they do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And have they been tested for leaks or leaching any kind of oils or anything?
Yes. Yeah.
They're
So
safety
are they or
inspected.
They
aren't
get safety inspected. Yes.
No, I asked about the.
They are not inside the garage. They are not.
So there's no leaking going on with any of those hydraulic hoists in the bus garage and they all work at this time?
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
And how many hoists do we have in there?
We use two sides. So 4.
4 in-ground hoists and how many above ground hoists do we have?
We don't have any above ground, but we have a
Just the
flat,
two.
just a flat bay that doesn't have a hoist at all.
Mhm.
So we have 4 in-ground hoists
For
Is
2
that right?
bays. Yeah.
and there's 2, what, in the front and 2 in the back? Or-
No, we only use 2 in the front and 1 in the back. In the back, there's no floor hoist, no floor hoists. It's flat.
Okay. And at this time, you're aware there's no leaching, you say it's been tested.
Yeah, inside, there's none that I'm aware of. There's other issues outside with the fuel tanks, but there's nothing inside.
Okay. So have you got an idea of budget of what possibly these repairs may cost for future?
No, I do not. No.
Are you talking about hoists
hoist.
or are you talking about maintenance repairs or?
Yeah, what's it gonna need to get that bus garage in tip-top shape with everything working and operating smoothly in there?
So if they're operational, this is going to be part of, when we talk about the operational topics, we'll end up talking about that building.
I was
And
gonna
I don't,
ask that question then,
Yeah.
Matt, but I'm assuming they would say, well, you're gonna have to talk to somebody in the bus garage, so I figured I'd just shortcut and ask the people in charge of transportation now, that are here speaking, what those costs might be.
sure, they might not know the exact dollar figure. I mean, they know the types of things to be repaired. We asked them to prepare tonight just with the bus fleet information, just in their defense here.
And I don't have a problem getting that information to you. I can talk with the mechanic tomorrow and have him build a schedule for you to let you know what we've spent and what he proposes that we're gonna need to spend.
So that's not something you normally keep track of.
I think the mechanics do, but it's not something that we necessarily look at. We look at it at budget time when we start developing our budget, like, so what is it gonna cost this year? Are we gonna do tire replacements? Are we gonna do mufflers? You know, when we do our preventative maintenance cycle and there's a difference between preventative maintenance and then the summer cycles. The summer cycles when we might change out tires or we might change out, mufflers, brakes, things like that aren't already worn out. We look at that to make sure we can kind of make sure that it's safe when we start in the fall. And it's a lot easier to do it in the summer months when they're not running as opposed to when they are running. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
mhm.
Okay, so you'll have some type of.
Yep, I can get some data for you.
Mhm. For the buses,
Absolutely.
yeah. And anything for the building, we kind of go to operations. We talk with Scott about that
Yeah.
because it's your building, so.
Yeah, when it comes to the hoists and the underground tanks and all that kind of stuff, it's really the operations piece. But we do have them safety inspected. Our mechanics have to go underneath it, so obviously that's an important thing to do.
Just one comment, one question. Put in a plug for my IT digital dashboard. So in the context of this discussion and presentation, many districts have their transportation budget public and available for anyone to be able to drill into data and facts related to the transportation budget. So quantity of school buses, what's the average maintenance per bus? What's the preventative, how frequent is preventative maintenance done? What type of predictive maintenance is done? So to me, it would be a great tool for not just us, but for the benefit of the public to have all that information presented in a digital format for all to consume. My question is, as it relates to this discussion, when I looked at the attachment prior to the meeting, it seemed that the focus was on the age of the fleet. And my question is, do those that manage this day to day, our bus fleet, think in the context of replacement specific to the age? Or are there other inputs like cost of operating the older buses where you're tracking the cost per year and saying, hey, this bus is now breaking down 2 or 3 times a year with major repairs that cost thousands of dollars, it should be replaced. How are you assessing? What are the factors that go into assessing replacing a school bus?
My mechanic would be better suited to speak to that, but I can tell you that if you scrolled further down on there, like you'll see we're retiring bus 13 and 14 this year, which are actually a year older than 2 of the buses that were running. But it's because of that exact thing. When we got them, they were a, what do you call it? Lease return. And when we got it, they were not in great condition. And also they're the only 2 internationals that we have. And so it's causing us to have to buy a bunch of parts and stuff for internationals when the rest of them are Bluebirds. So that is, they do think of things like that, like the year versus, and the mileage. I mean, you can see the mileage is up on those too. And so we rotate buses also for mileage. Like if there's a route that, for instance, is always going out to Milford and getting a lot of mileage on, then the next year we'll take that bus and put it on an in-town route and give that route, to kind of like even it out, to even it. So, yeah.
So to your feedback, on that spreadsheet, if you could, Dr. Outlast, scrolling, when I looked through there, the way I was interpreting your key is that 1 is good and 3 is bad. And I thought that, and this shows the same, all of the buses are rated 1, which suggests to me that the folks that assess the buses, see you nodding your head, like the buses and say the buses are in good condition.
The mechanic rated it.
Mechanic, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why are those 3 buses then at the bottom being replaced if they're rated a 1 or taken out of service?
I think part of it had to do with standardizing the bus fleet, so we don't have to buy additional parts. 2 of them are internationals, and we pretty much do Bluebird now. And so it would do away with us having to stock all the parts for just 2 buses, as opposed to being able to buy in more bulk with just the Holland bus, our.
Well, the other thing is he's not
Bluebirds.
every bus we can run every bus. If it needs repair or it's critical, it's not going to be running right now. And we would indicate that, but every bus that we have, we can run. So he fixed them to the point where we can run them. So to him, they're good. They can be run.
So if you have spare buses, without prolonging this, if you have spare buses available in the fleet that you can swap in when a bus goes down, what drives the need to have spare parts stocked when in today's day and age with like FedEx and UPS?
Right, they don't.
International and
Yeah.
Bluebird are US-based
Yeah.
businesses,
Yeah.
so I would think you could get parts within 24
And they do,
hours.
and they do. They don't have a lot sitting on the shelf. But I mean, just in having, okay, I have a filter there and now it can go on any one of my buses versus I have to have this, then I have to have the international as well. So he's just trying to get them all the same, standardized. So.
Just if I could add one thing, or could you guys talk a little bit about the inspection that takes place every year? That Jim prepares them, there's the state police inspection of all the buses. Maybe just mention that a little bit because that goes into this, that there's a third party that also assesses
Yeah,
the bus
state-
quality.
Yeah, the state of Michigan does their inspections of all the buses throughout all the school districts yearly. And they come in and they have their criteria that they evaluate, and they give you either a red tag if you can't run the bus anymore, yellow if it needs some kind of repair, or green. And I didn't bring did you have my standings?
But it's okay, because I can tell you,
Okay.
you guys have the best record out of the whole county in terms of your buses. I think last year he had 1 tag, but in years before it was 100% across the board for probably, I think maybe 5 years. Don't quote me, but I would say real close to that. Jim's very dedicated. The mechanic is very dedicated. We tried to get him to come tonight, but he had something else going on, so that's why he couldn't be here. But I'm sure he'll be happy to provide any additional information you guys need.
And one last related question to my earlier question. Is it Jim, the mechanic, that makes the determination on retiring buses? So I kind of have latched onto the comment that
Mhm.
you're getting rid of, you're retiring buses to standardize the fleet.
Mhm.
And it just, as a layman who's not in the bus garage day to day, it just seems odd that we would be retiring buses on account of trying to standardize spare parts, because that leads to why are we even stocking spare parts if we have spare buses that if a bus breaks down, we take a spare bus, put it in the fleet while the other one's being
Right.
worked on. Any spare part for any of these buses should be available
Right.
within 24 hours, I would think.
I understand what you're saying. I'd ask him to comment more. I mean, you can see the mileage on these as well. One's at 136,000,
Sure.
one's at 120. So they're high mileage as well.
Yeah, but if they're rated 1
Right.
by the mechanic,
Mhm.
why are we retiring a bus? I mean, the mileage today is very different than it was 30 years ago. So I guess my question is, thinking from the perspective of a taxpayer, all in favor of having great working
Right.
buses, they carry our
Safe,
children to
right.
school, we want them to be safe.
Mhm.
100% support that goal.
Mhm.
But I'm not supportive of saying because a bus has a lot of mileage, high mileage, it needs to be retired when we have spare buses that are available in the event that one of the buses goes down, a spare can be made available. And then if there's a repeat issue with a specific bus, then we have a basis to say this bus no longer is operating at the level we expect it to. But according to that rating, it's at your highest level of performance. It's a 1.
And I think if you look, we have like 6 spares already. And because there's less buses that are rolling less routes, we thought that it was more, we were looking at the cost of what it costs to insure it, to maintain it, to all those pieces. Do we need 9 spares and we only have 21 routes was the question.
Mhm.
So I think that's where Jim thought, well, maybe we'll retire 3. And if we're going to retire 3, why not pick the 2 international so I don't have to worry about those parts anymore in the parts room or for any other reason. And I don't know, I can't really speak to him, but I know there's been a part shortage in a lot of areas. So we try and get what we can when we can, because there's times where buses are down for a couple weeks because we can't get the part.
And when you
So-
retire, you're retiring a bus, you're selling those
Yeah, they
buses.
get
I don't
auctioned.
know what the dollar value is on a,
Yeah, some of them were running about $6,000. Now this year it might be a little bit higher. And that comes back to you.
So are all the buses gone now that were out there that were no longer need for
No,
our? for
3 of
service?
I think we had 6 on auction. I think 3 of the 6 were purchased just within the last 2
And then
weeks.
what happens to the other 3 then?
They're going to stay on auction for a little while,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, we have more buses that are going to come in also with that auction, so it makes them breathe new life to
So
get
eventually,
interest.
they'll be out of the lot, right? They won't be stored there?
Correct.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask a clarifying question. The 1 rating, that means that they're safe to run and they're operable. It
Right.
doesn't mean that that's the same, everybody that's rated, all the buses that are rated a 1 don't have the same life left to them. They are not operating as well as the one next to it necessarily, but
Correct.
they are safe to operate,
Right.
safe to take our kids to school.
Right.
They meet the standard of what the state police expect. So if we had the state police come in tomorrow, all of them are 1s, I expect all of them to pass with flying colors.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how we talked to Jim about how he needed to rate it that way.
And if they
So-
have a 1, according to that key, they do not need repair because
Not
a
at this
bus
time.
rated 2 needs repair.
Correct.
Correct.
So none of those buses need repair according
At
to.
this moment,
At this
correct.
moment, you're right.
Thank you.
Yeah, especially at the end of summer.
Super.
Mhm.
One other question, it's not so much about the number of buses in the fleet or the plan for purchasing them, but you did mention that if we continue to have growth in the southern part of our district, we might need to add more routes. As we're coming up to the start of the year, are we looking to add routes this year, or are you just thinking about that for potential growth next year and after?
I always feel like there's potential to add a route. And right now, it's in your southern area, like the Pinckney border right now. There's a couple subdivisions that are developing quite heavily. Yeah.
What do we think our runtime is for some of those routes then at the edges of our district?
nobody's on the bus more than an hour total, AM or PM. You know what I mean? If they're picked up first, they're dropped off
From
first.
stop to
From
school.
stop to school.
And are we counting the time that they're stopped in the middle?
Yeah. Mhm.
Right, because I mean, I know I live in one of those neighborhoods that's on the eastern edge of the district. So my kids would run to Maltby in the morning and pass their elementary school and sit there for 20 minutes and then come back to their elementary school. But it's been a long time since they've been on that bus, so I don't know.
Yeah.
From pickup at the edge of a route
Mhm.
to the time you drop at an elementary school, how long are those kids on the bus?
It might exceed, we don't leave Scranton until about 7:30 and we drop at Maltby at about 8:30. You know what I mean? So, and that's leaving Scranton and starting the route. So it's real close to an hour. We try to make sure that it's like right in that hour range, depending on where they're picked up and so forth. But
Are we at the point where we should look at whether just our two-tiered system is still functional and appropriate? I know we've looked at that a couple of times since I've been on the board and have reached the conclusion that we would not be able to hire the drivers and maintain the system for extra tiers.
For 3-tier.
Right.
right.
But as our district grows, are we reevaluating that every year when we're looking at the routes?
I think we would. I know Heartland just looked at them and they said, no, it wouldn't work for them,
Well,
so.
We have in Brighton, we've looked at this, and Laura has spent considerable amount of time. There's a system called Polyplot where they can project routes and do all things with timing. We have, it's challenging with the start times, and we could go through some of those conversations if you want, but the 3-tier is not going to help us unless we probably would have to purchase about 10 more buses and about 10 more routes. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, it would be hard,
in
especially
order-
with the driver shortage
Yeah.
nationwide. It'd be really hard to try to do anything else, just to, minimize the times and section out the, Maltby or whatever. you're
But we
thinking.
had that conversation when we were talking about the Maltby parking lot, and we were looking at the times of school, and we were in negotiations, looking at start times and things like that. So we did a pretty exhaustive, and Laura and team did a full look at that, so we could definitely share that information.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
How are we situated as far as hiring drivers for this next year?
I mean, right now we have 23 routes
23 routes,
and 22 drivers, or 21 drivers.
Mhm.
And I think you
Tomorrow's
have
my
some
bid
in
day.
training, don't you?
Yeah, I do have 1 in training and 2 going through the credentials to be hired.
What's the pay of the drivers now?
2087.
That's the high.
Starting
Yeah.
starting at 2087.
$20.
$20.87.
2080, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's the starting point, yes.
And is there some type of signing bonus or benefits or what goes on?
Yep, currently we have a signing bonus. If you come on with no credentials, you get $2,000. And if you come fully credentialed, you get $5,000.
I'm only asking that question because I'm sure there's people watching.
We can hope.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I just have a follow-up question. Talked about the runtime and potentially maybe wanting to add a route at some point. Are there routes that are overly filled that could use another bus? I mean, for some of these, or everyone's pretty evenly spread
Everyone's
out?
pretty even at this point. That's what we do when we get towards the end of the year. We take a look at where people were kind of heavy and people were not.
Doing
And then
counts.
we do counts, and then that's what we've been doing all summer, is kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul and getting everybody,
Shifting people around a little
shifting
bit.
them around. And there's a little bit of change this year, so.
Well, and on that note, I remember we did a sort of deeper dive a few years ago. I mean, isn't there a software program that, as I recall, that's utilized where all that information is plugged in to the software, that in terms of the students, where they live, the distances, to maximize the efficiency of the route? I'm just,
Right,
No,
right.
you're right. You're
No,
right.
it's a great,
yeah, I just remember that from
Yeah.
a few years ago, that,
That's what Dr.
yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's one of the
Kind
other
of leads
things
into our next.
we're going to talk about is looking into routing software. We're going to put out an RFP to see who can give us the best benefits and what the charges are, because Wayne Reese's Polyplot, which we've been using for years, was free to you until this year. So.
And the grant dried up from Wayne Risa, so they said that they got to start charging us. So it's really comparable to any other routing software out there. And so there's other routing software that have more bells and whistles, like GPS, like on My Ride, where the parent can see the bus and when it's coming. And so that's a huge piece. That's, all about customer service and the expectation of what, parents have been asking for years. So once school gets going, we're going to put an RFP out and see what's out there. And I think we can buy with power because we can get it for all districts. Heartland's the only one that wouldn't participate because they already purchased software, this Tyler Technology, which is something that we're looking at. But there's 4 other districts that are definitely on board that want to look. So I think it would be a really great idea. Polyplot is not even web-based yet. So it's old. And I know they're trying to put little patches on here and there to try and keep the customer service up, but it's not working, especially when we don't have GPS like we have it in the Specialized Transportation Department. And I can't tell you how happy the parents were when they got that My Stop and the app goes right on their phone. And believe me, when I say sometimes it drops, they're on the phone calling us right away saying, hey, it dropped, can you reset me? And we reset them right away. So I think that'll be a great addition. So we're going to look at that probably in September or October.
I have a quick question. So we're looking at the projections here of the buses. Is there any thought or talk or thinking about EV buses or doing something else other than our traditional buses? And what would that take?
I think right now, we're kind of letting everybody else test the waters because we've seen a lot of different problems with it. Now,
Cold
weather affected it. There's been batteries that have caught on fire. There's been all kinds of different things that when I talked with Dr. Hubert, I said, I think we should wait 3 years to see what it, let them root out all the different issues. And then we could look at something like that, because I don't think that the grant money is going to dry up anytime soon. But even if we got grant money, it's very expensive to put the charging units in. There's a lot of little behind the scene costs. So it's not like you can just purchase a bus with the grant money and you're good to go. You still have quite an investment.
And the cost of repair is exponentially higher.
Correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So in your annual budget projections, what do we need to, you're talking 2 buses a year.
Mhm.
And what's our average cost now of a bus?
I think the last one we just purchased was 74,000. I think one of them we got was a wheelchair bus. You have a student in the district that is not special ed only because they're wheelchair bound. And so the parent really put a lot of pressure on us. They wanted them to be mainstream like everyone else. So we finally had the ability to purchase a lift bus for them. So this year they'll be with their peers and be able to ride a regular ed bus. Now that bus was like $135,000, quite expensive. But I think the other ones were about 74.
Yeah.
So technically, we could line item 150,000 a year to 200 for bus replacement.
Correct.
So it's not some huge number.
Correct.
We don't have to necessarily raise taxes to pay for our buses.
Well, and honestly, back in the day, I was here 30 years ago, when times got tough and things got lean, they pulled the bus away because they had the capacity to do that because it was already in the budget. Not that I'm encouraging anybody to do that, but I'm just saying it's kind of a place setter. And if you fall on hard times, it's something certainly to consider.
What do we have line item right now, Dr. Ella?
About $200,000.
Yes, we're there. So it's been earmarked, so that's good.
Yep, and that's all we're doing. We're talking about things that we'll have to invest in the future.
Which is good.
We can talk
Which
about
is fine.
where that comes from. That's a board decision.
So in our fleet, your routes, it's 26 running buses that are in routes. You have 23 routes, I understand, right?
Correct.
So you have 26 buses. And then we have 30 total.
Yeah.
So you got some backups in there.
Mhm.
So then in that, what's our annual expenditure to run those buses?
That's what
Hello?
she's going to get with you.
That's
right?
what
For the-
I'll have
for
to
the-
get that from Jim. We weren't prepared to bring that today.
So we have because if I recall, in a day, we actually used to run like 46 buses,
Mhm.
not that long ago.
I know.
And
10 years.
and I believe Heartland runs 60. Is
Yeah.
that right?
And Heartland's down to 36.
Half then. Yeah, okay. So as we look at that, our expenses are pretty high to run the buses we're running, and we're actually running significantly less buses than prior years, but yet the expenses have stayed right up there just because the cost of money. So it's something to think about. And and do you find that the scheduling, the way it's going right now, and I know these parents here have kids in school still, but I've heard, again, these stories where it was an hour and a half and it was just too much time. So we pretty much got that under control now that the students are seeing 30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we say an hour, depending on when they get on and they get off. So if the student is on first in the morning, then in the afternoon they're off first. Do you see what I'm saying? So they may have a longer ride in the morning, but in the
But
afternoon.
he's saying is it's staying at about an hour?
Yeah, it is staying at about an hour.
And that's working for the parents who have students in school. I mean, like I said, it's what it is. But and I heard about the tier 3, in order to reduce that in a significant amount, you'd have to change the system around it at
The dynamics,
a
right?
cost, right?
Yeah.
And so to reduce the bus rides to 30 minutes might cost us another $1 million a year, right?
Yeah.
Would it be possible for us, I mean, piggybacking off of Bill's initial question, to get, and I don't know if you would need to come back to the meeting, just being respectful of your personal time, but maybe if it could be shared through superintendent or Jacob or even Dave, maybe just a like executive summary, high level report on, what is the average amount of time that a student spends? What's the range? So shortest to the most.
Okay.
We've done reports like that
You know,
before for other
the
districts.
cost
so
of repair,
no
what's the average cost of repair in a given year? Like
Mhm.
just some of the basics, that'd be, I think, super helpful. If we could get that one of his.
We can do some
weekly
bullet
updates
points
or-
for you.
Yeah, bullet points.
Maybe we can connect on
Interesting.
that.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
And then we can have Mr. Jones fill in some of the dollar stuff. I've written down some of the questions that have been asked, and he'll be able to fill that in with the actual cost from last year.
That'd be great.
Okay. All good?
We good?
Thank you both for
You're
being here.
welcome.
Really, really appreciate
Oh, no
it.
problem.
They're doing a great job, and it is a thankless job, and just thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. One other thing that I was hoping we could talk about just briefly, it's something that is on our wish list when it comes to safety and security. And I'd like to bring forward our amazing police liaisons to talk about it here. We have Officer Bell and Deputy Schuster here. As they're walking up, we do have a team, a security team that includes our police liaisons, some administrators, some people from the state level, our private security, some people that work in other aspects of security that meet regularly to talk about our security as a district, everything from procedures to equipment to facilities to staffing. We've been meeting for 2 or 3 years regularly, and we've made a lot of progress on our wish list. But every time we do something, we're looking for the next thing, and our officers really are leading the way with that. One of the things on the list that we want to talk about, it's a big ticket item. It is, we'd like to be able to explore a comprehensive system that pulls together everything with security into one comprehensive system. There's one example of it. There's Lockout USA that's right here in Brighton. It was called the Boot, but it's Lockout USA. Both Jake and Dave Jones came from Taylor, where they had this system, and they're able to talk about some of those things. But if we could, I'd like to have our officers talk about why they see that as being something that will pull our security plan together into one cohesive unit. So do you mind talking a little bit about what you see as the value of this?
I think in a nutshell, the value is it brings everything that we talk about and preach about together in one system. You've got a boot for almost every classroom, an interactive boot. It's hard to explain without representatives here. It's an interactive boot that you can, once you remove it from the actual boot from the box, It activates iPad or tablets that administrators, law enforcement, central dispatch has. It immediately puts the school in lockdown. You place it in, it's reinforced steel. You place it in the door with the holes. You place it in the door. It works on doors that open inside and out. You place it in the floor. The door cannot be opened. Like I said, it alerts everybody, the full system. There's lights throughout the school.
Would you like me to play
Inside
that?
and
There's like a
There is a-
1 minute video.
There is a video. That'd be
Would you want me to
fantastic.
play that? I put it in the link, in one of my updates.
So just, can I ask just a quick clarifying question?
Yeah.
From the update or note that I read prior to the meeting, I was under the impression, and again, my interpretation of these communications may be off here, Dr. Owen. I thought it was specific to bus security. I thought it was monitoring the buses. It was a way to ultimately capture what's happening on a school bus and have it come back to a central location. So it sounds like it's the school and doors.
It's every,
District-wide, yeah.
In every building.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the system that is, that he's mentioning, St. Pat's just got it. So St. Pat's right here in the city of Brighton. So we actually have a tablet that's at Brighton Police Department that if something triggers, it will immediately go off in our police department, letting us know what's going on.
I'm gonna play, I think this is the video here. Oh,
I'd like to welcome you to the Lockdown Company's website. I am Sheriff Terry Junk, currently the Executive Director of the Michigan Sheriff's Association. I should point out intruders. The question is, are our classrooms safer with it? And if the answer to that question is yes, then what could possibly be wrong with it? If you can shut it, the boot can secure it.
what I want you to see here, the student. So here's the voice side of it, the lights.
How is that different than a bolt lock? Like, what's the?
This is only one example. This is only one example of it. Jake, you guys put this in Taylor. You were talking about how it like alerted your, oops, sorry.
So as soon as one pull station, or if anybody was to pull that in any, so say we're in Scranton, and say one classroom was to pull that out of the container, that lockdown boot is pulled out of that box, it alerts, the system alerts to exactly what classroom pulled it out of the station, and then it alerts the whole school to lock down. So then everybody would pull theirs and drop it in.
I mean, I'm all for anything we can do to have the securest buildings in the United States of America, but I'm just struggling to understand, like in today's day and age, there's electronics that you can put on door locks, as both of you know, that you can program them when the lock is retracted or extended, there's a signal.
So I can say for us, I mean, we've been through the demonstration quite a few times. I would say you'd have to see the system yourself.
But I mean, from your perspective as members of law enforcement, what is the difference between the boot and using those outside doors as an example right there? When those are bolt locked,
You could still penetrate that door if you wanted to.
you mean with your body?
Potentially. You cannot penetrate. With that device in, you cannot penetrate that door. It would be impossible.
I think I think one of the things that is with this system specifically that we're talking about that would be a little bit more than just that bolt lock is, yes, it does go into the floor. It is reinforced, so it's almost impossible to get through the door. But the notification system that goes with it.
Yes.
So not only is if you're walking up to Brighton High School to see your daughter, and all of a sudden there's a signal outside that's flashing red, you know immediately that there's something going on here. I got to get out of here. There isn't even, like, you can see that even in the hallways. So somebody who may be even hearing impaired, they can see that visually and see that, okay, hey, there's something going on. I need to go somewhere. So just that part right there, in addition to the alerting that it goes in with us as first responders, is a lot faster. And then they also have another part to it, which comes with signage that is reflective, because most signage that you see, as I say, we can't see it in
It's
here, it's
flat.
on the wall
Flat.
and you can't read it. So if it's smoky, we can't see what's going on. They also have mapping that goes with it. So it's like, it's a complete system that shows us mapping. It also has these extra little features, which would be a little bit more advanced than just, yes, a deadbolt. But yeah, I completely understand what you're saying.
And I mean, Officer Bill, what you're describing, I mean, there's a lot of different companies that. provide that.
Absolutely.
Like, for
Yes.
example, Honeywell, right? All
Mhm.
major buildings, if you go to any major commercial building, like a residential high rise, fire departments go to a single station and you can literally see
Mhm.
every floor, every room, which room pulled the fire alarm. It's all interconnected. There's beacons that when someone pulls a fire alarm in this building, that chirps and flashes, you know you need to get out of the building. Right?
Mhm.
So,
That's what we're talking about.
yeah, I'm
We
just,
want to shop and see
Yeah.
what else is out there, see if there's a system that will help our law enforcement and our officers. Lockout USA is a local one, but if it's not Lockout USA, we'll, you know,
Yeah, there's
But
lots of
that's
different
one
options,
op-
like you're even saying. There's
we
lots
just
of
wanted to
options.
put it on the
just-
radar that we'd like to explore this, and these systems are not inexpensive. So that's why we wanted to put it on. We were talking about future expenditures. We want to put it on there that is something that is on that wish list. Our security money that we've received in the past, we've spent a lion's share of that we've spent on our personnel and a variety of other things that we have spent that money on. So we don't have millions of dollars, to put in a system like this. So we wanted to put on the radar because that is a conversation. If we went down this pathway and we came to the board with, this idea, it does come with a big price tag, which is the goal here tonight was to identify kind of what some of the big costs might be over the next 5 years. This is one that's on the wish list. We'd love to shop, see what else is out there. What do they use in private business? What do they use in other areas to secure their buildings? Find something that our law enforcement officers feel will take us to the next level of security. That's why we put it on.
So, in Deputy Schuster, you're saying that door is impenetrable when you have that in place, correct? What happens if there's an emergency inside of the classroom and a student decides to engage that system? How do you get into that classroom?
There's a tool that we have to get in.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
There's-
We all have tools. I have one in my car,
Yeah, there's a tool that we carry that.
and I could get it open in
There's a,
seconds.
yeah, there's a tool that we have.
but
They,
specific to the technology or a battery?
Right, that's what, yes.
specific,
no.
specific to the
Like a
technology.
key
Yeah.
type thing.
Yep, specific to technology to
So-
be able to
So
get it
that,
open.
that comes with the system then,
Yep.
obviously,
Correct.
right, in order to be able to open if you
Correct.
need to.
Yes.
Yes.
I see. Okay, with it. And then what's a system like this run, or what's been the estimates or your projections for something like this?
I don't think we've got,
Yeah, well, so Jake and Dave did this in, they did this in Taylor. How many students did you have in Taylor?
Very close to Brighton, so it was about 5,500.
5,500, and I believe it was 1.7, 1.8 million.
At Taylor when we got it, yeah.
And that was a
for
couple
all
years
the
ago.
buildings, the entire
Yep, that
district?
was for all buildings, complete system, central office, so every building that we had, every door, and it was for all the mapping, so it was the whole system.
And again, I mean, I'm all for providing our kids with security. So to me, if it's $2 million, if it's something that's going to be safe for our kids, I have no issue in, trying to help get that money approved. Because again, I don't think you can put a price on safety at the end of the day, right? So anything, in my opinion, like this, I think it's great. Thank you.
We're not ready to present anything tonight. This Lockout USA is a local one. They're good people, and we've had a chance to see their stuff in action. And we've gone through, but if we go down this route, we'd want to do an exhaustive search and visit a lot of places. And
thinking about systems that we might like to look at, I would be curious about this or other systems that enable us to integrate with our existing cameras and the other security equipment that we've already got.
IT systems?
That cameras, we've got,
Agreed.
to make sure that we're leveraging what we have already invested in to the greatest extent possible, rather than just adding on another object that's in a separate system that, doesn't work with what we've already got, or might force us to replace what we've already got and have spent a small fortune on already. So as we're thinking about like the RFP goals, that would be one of the ones that I think would be key.
So to piggyback off of Ms. Reed's comment, who within the district is leading the effort? Like, is there a specification or SOP, a personal individual who's championing and owning the effort where, they're going to go out and actually solicit requests for proposals, stuff like that?
We are not that far down the road.
Okay.
This is like using Mr. Conley's dream sheet. This is the security dream sheet here. This is something that we think would be great. It's in its infancy. It's been on our wish list for a long time, but it's a big ticket item. But as we were looking at future investments, this is one, if we're going to move forward with some long-range planning, they would like to have this in the conversation. But
You say this has been on our wish list for a long time. This is the first time I recall it being brought to the board. Throughout all the bonds and everything, I don't remember any kind of conversations like this.
yeah, so I don't know if it was on before this is my 5th year in the district. Our wish list, we prioritized our wish list, and we started with people, started with getting a second police liaison officer, which has been an incredible investment. Then we invested in putting security officers in every single building, trained police officers, retired police that are there every single day. We've spent heavily on updating our cameras. Nick Castile, when he's here next time, could talk about that. Integrated to more cutting edge tech, like that has been a huge investment. The board's talked about that. So we were prioritizing much of this. We spent a lot of state grant dollars on this. This was a big ticket. Had we started with this, we wouldn't have Deputy Schuster. Had we started with this, we might not have Premier Security. And having those people in our building every day with their top priority being safety and security, that's what we felt was the best way today to keep our buildings safe. So we prioritize people over this, but this is important too.
And there's no question, I'm sure so far it's been the right decision, right?
Yeah.
I think this was back, I think probably 10 years ago, they came in and gave us something similar. Were you on the board, Roger, at the time when they
About
had,
10 years ago.
they had something on,
No, there was something our first year.
yeah, that they had that
They did,
locked in
yep.
this, it was a
They-
company in Brighton that did it.
Yes,
but
yep,
I
they've talked
think
to you guys
the-
a long time ago.
I think the technology has improved since
Yes.
then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, the central monitoring
Yeah.
aspect of it, I think, has come a long way since then.
And the ability for first responders to be able to open.
Yeah, right.
has dramatically changed.
Yes.
Mr. Conley?
I'm about safety and security, but I'm also about the safety and the mental health of students. I have an issue, and scaring students is not the plan. Okay, these safety items are important. The drills, everything else that goes on in here, they're not supposed to be paranoid about life. They're not supposed to be paranoid about going to school. It's an issue. So I witnessed it personally. A student had a seizure at one of our schools, and I was there and saw it happen. They locked the school down for a student having a seizure. And the reason they locked the school down is they didn't want the traffic in the hallway where the student was having the seizure. But they went in all lockdown. Like, okay, we have a threat. There was no threat. There was a student that was having a medical condition. Ambulance came, no issues. The staff handled it well. But that was how they addressed it. So I would just share with the board, be very cautious on how this is used at a high level, because the student seizure, in my opinion, was not a reason to lock the school down. Just my opinion. But the administrator decided it was, and I understood why, because they didn't want the student traffic while they were handling the student in the hallway as they were, heading out for medical care. And that's fair, but this was not an all-out emergency in the school. But the students didn't know that, and doors were locked, can't go in the hallway. Everybody runs for the cover. Okay, wrong. But they shouldn't run for cover if a student's having a seizure.
We've come a long way since since that, our officers have done this. So in that case, like we had a medical emergency with a staff member at Hawkins. So they go into a shelter in place.
Yeah.
Our officers tell us to make sure you communicate with students exactly what's going on. Hey, we have a student in the hallway that, or we have somebody in the hallway that's having a medical,
It's really
everything's
important.
fine. They tell us,
Right.
tell everybody, make sure they know that everything's okay.
I'll rephrase that.
Lockdown.
That was a shelter in place that they did. It wasn't a lockdown. It was
But a lockdown,
rephrase that.
when lockdown happens, the only time we use lockdown is when it is a serious situation. We don't use the word lockdown unless you need to take that very seriously. So
That's
your,
what they did.
your point is taken,
Okay, good.
but these officers, they know that, and all the experts that they've worked with, and they understand that as well. And we
We'll know in
only
a
go
few
there when
years,
we
though.
have to, and hopefully we'll never have to go there.
Yeah, here's the deal.
Yeah.
We won't know for a few years what the effect is on all these kids with these lights going off and bells, whistles, and all the different things that they're dealing with. You know, they used to say hide under a desk when there was going to be a nuclear bomb. Okay, they did. Okay, let's not forget. And there was a time that smoking machines showed you smoking cigarettes and you could smoke a pack a day and it wouldn't hurt you. Don't forget that stuff. All right, we're changing a lot of things. I'm all about the security of these buildings. You guys know that for sure. I'm just bringing another element to it. And it was a shelter in place. It wasn't a lockdown. That's what they ordered. It wasn't. It was. So let me clarify that because I recall the verbiage. But it still was still a scary environment for the kids that were, you know, that. So as long as we can get that straight, if there's a situation that we want everybody to stay in their rooms because there's an emergency and there was a student needed assistance right away without being interrupted by a whole bunch of students in the hallway, I'd say it's fair. But that's what I would just caution. Is that,
Yeah,
you know,
and shelter in places, they operate normal operating procedures in the classroom. So teacher can go on with their business, average students can move around in the classroom, they just can't go in the hallway.
It's normal these days, but it's not to me from the old days. You know, our doors were all open. We had the doors open at every end of the school and the air blew through it because we didn't have air conditioning, including this building at the time. I don't think we have air conditioning today, do we?
Yeah,
So
this
it's
is
just
a
like
blast
when
from
we
the,
used to-
blast
Used
from
to
the
be a
past right
library
here.
and, you know, this was, so anyway, I'll let you go on that, but I just would like to keep that in mind, that training and how that's used is very important, that we don't scare our kids at a point that we're supposed to have a safe environment for them, and that's what it's there for. Right. Thank you.
All right, other questions? Deputy Schuster, Officer Bell,
Thank you
thank
both.
you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the superintendent report, moves us to the call to the public. If there is anyone here that would like to address the board, this is your opportunity to do so. We ask that you fill out a card, place it in the box to the left of Dr. Mosier. There are no cards, as I understand it. All right. Well, then that will close the call to the public portion of our agenda and moves us into item 7, closed session, attorney-client privilege.
I move that this board go into closed session pursuant to Section 8H of the Open Meetings Act to review confidential written attorney-client communication.
By Ms. Reed, support by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All right, Ms. Ackermight, we need a roll call on this.
Ms. Reed,
Yes?
Dr. Krebs,
Yes.
Mrs. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Trombley.
Yep.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
Mr. Storm,
Yes.
Mr. Myers.
Yes. That passes 7-0. All right, we're going to be going into closed session for a little bit. We will reconvene. We're going to go into the
Yeah, 131
yeah,
downstairs.
we will exit this room, so you're welcome to stay here, and we will be back shortly.
Just know that the camera stays on. They can hear everything said in the entire room. So just know that. So if you're going to have a conversation, I'd step in the hall unless you want everybody to know it. July 18th. July 18th. Yeah, and I put closed session. Obviously, I can't call it closed session. It was like, there's a request from you to be turned this specific to this. And then
I
it
don't
goes,
think, I know I didn't read.
and then I, right underneath it, yeah, I got it. Right in the request, July 18th. And then underneath it, I say, this is what Jake's going to talk
So
about.
since,
Right,
so since the 18th, there's been no communication.
18th was the last one.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. All right. Bring us down.
You still want me, right?
over at, yeah, my soccer trial. Yeah. Always guarantee that. You're always welcome.
Is that okay? The next I'll shoot it back. Okay.
Oh, hey, man. Tell him I said that.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Where is Rudy right now?
He's going to Northern Michigan.
Yeah. Thanks, Stacy.
Is that where you went?
No, it's where my buddy goes.
Okay. Hockey or golf? Hockey. Oh. Maybe. Okay. You guys say hockey too?
He's got to be related to Julie. She's one of my best friends. You guys.
Oh, well, I'm not, but.
Yeah. Down the bloodline, right? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She's my neighbor.
Oh, is she?
Our girls have played volleyball.
Yeah.
Forever.
Okay. Well, your birthday.
And my daughter played, I don't know, 7th through 12th. She decided she just wanted a career. No, she's in Chicago. She was very good. She was classic. That was Ken. So she was 2000. I think she was 2000. My two adults, so friends. Daughter is 24. She's in Chicago. She's working. So he'd be 15.
I know.
So yours is the boat?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's ways, I don't know if you work on it on stage.
I want to go down. That was my spirit. I mean, just make it.
He's basketball. First day off, the second day, it's straight A's, and he decided bringing high state percentage. So one of this is. Oh, yeah. It's natural, it's so we his attitude, they both think I just got, you got everything. It's whatever, you suck your drive, you got it, that's it. It's the last one. My wife played pretty good before I think that. Right here makes me get a story about sports, but played a long time as one, the biggest one is working. What else? Copyrights, going to let them shine, and people shining, and all those things. This meeting is
Seems like that's it. Find a way to get around and close it right now. Again, I'm just proposing these. Excellent. Go early. Yeah, I go early in the morning, which I like to do. I'll get it right. And we're always coming back to that, so it's not good. Somewhere around. Yeah, it sounds like it floats, but it's there. Yeah, there you go. That's the especially. I said that. Moldy guys. Well, it's automotive. I'm construction. Yeah. She's absolutely. A lot of times, how much of it is together? You said she can, she said. My son is 13, who's the city
he's out there, one of his first jobs at the city last was putting these power generators in the charging station because the grids can't do it. And I don't care how many years you give them, you know, the 40 years, whatever, they consider it's impossible. They said you couldn't charge them enough money to make it possible. I really think at 40, 50,000 county, the damage was done when we were building this country. Now you start trying to build them. Look what happened in what was it, 2000, we lost the East Coast. It didn't take much to blow, knock that thing down. And nothing's really.
Heavy loaded competition.
They have a lot of the system, the backup plan and all this stuff, but still, it's not sustained. We just, you know, I think it's easy, consumers, and other ideas, but something like this, it costs a lot of money to build a pure community. Doesn't matter how many times you split it up and tell them to share, it's still, you know, this much, it gets to this point, that's all it's. Electricity is still, we just don't have control.
Right.
So, fresh people are talking about, trying to plug your freshman or it's here, you know, they don't understand. I understand. I mean, they always understand. So they realize it's really considered I think that's all we got. That's all. I don't want to be scared. Construction, you start talking about little trucks and we don't want it, just means there's another way that I can be done. Old friends, that's still true. Looking forward to it, by the way.
Yeah, and they,
Yeah. No. You care about this? Tired of you before it's like, I don't have a problem. To live over, you know, I can read letters from Morse. So, Chilson Road, take right road across Chilson, before you get to the railroad tracks, over the railroad tracks, and then all stuff back here. It's not the person on the other side there.
oh, yeah.
Greg lives right at the beginning, and there's some right there. So, but, it's still a lot. It is on seven. But they, he's a builder guy. Well, he retired. Now he's working for Dex. You know Dex. Roll up next for the Kings. He became our vice president. We were trying to, we went to Nashville with the kids. And then he's on his laptop looking at this. I said, "You're interested in stuff? I love it." He's really, that's right. That name on there.
Yeah.
Like last week, that's why I'm looking at it. Yeah, he does, I mean, he's got a White House, but he's also got his, rash, I know he's chasing her. Yeah. He's always talking about this. New car's Grand Ledge. Jack, so where he actually did, or we want, she's, I'm going after it. We're gonna have an electric bird tonight, and he's got a scare one on. So you're not really sold on that. So she goes, I don't have that. Don't worry, everybody calm down. They don't have that much time. No. So we're all Google, I'm not anymore. Once about, you put your time in, spend money. I'll do a lot of games though. I love watching. And I cannot wait, I honestly, I cannot wait. He's the best coach. Who is it now? Wait a minute, does he coach at Legacy too? I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah. And it's interesting how I feel like some people, but some of the world, and you have a whole approach. Not everyone understands all of it. And you'll find someone who has this whole approach, and someone who will really trigger it at first. You're like, oh my gosh. And then you see like the impact that has on everything else. For like the, short of the world. It's just interesting people like that. And it changes it.
She went to nationals and she's at less than second place or something. Orlando, so she's kind of, she's always the, they always have two lead teams.
What are they considered?
So my son's age, so it's her, she coached, she's gonna coach for France. She's 34 years teaching. And I just also we just, we don't have that. We don't do this. Who's he coaching it? Oh, Gilmore. How's the research? Was that? Last
This
couple years?
year was the inaugural.
That's why I.
And it's a spring sport.
My son would love it.
It's
The problem is, he's starting, he's running out of time. I'm like, okay, a forced part, when are you gonna sit down? It's ridiculous.
so fun. It is.
Oh, it's last, he always wants to play on the beach, really, he's in the US. And I understand that's what everyone's watching my wife for 37 years.
So you just
Actually, I'm writing that myself.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's, So we're just on the Blues, right across. Do that for the. Yeah, if you don't mind, I went to, my parents sent me to Cardinal Mooney for a couple of years. I needed public school. So my daughter, the favorite song. We thought it would be good for me. I needed more sports. Then I'm back in doing it. I'm 56. Yeah. Yeah, currently was Lisa and Lance Cruz middle school at that time. They're now our whole classroom team. I think they were 22. So we have to combine with Lake Cross or something and have a real team. We're going to, otherwise it's just a bunch of guys that are there. They swear to get busy with something. So that's it. I don't think you do for a few years. Because I know, people, what do we think about? You couldn't wait to get out. You get tired of your job and go, and you're out there for a few years, and you're like, man, I had a what was I thinking? That's what happens.
She, we did.
So, as I told mine, so. So, what did I say that?
That's what I.
That's top enough. My wife does that. The only one they do national is it's just national. Otherwise, it's in the state. They go. I believe the state.
In St. Louis.
Right.
This is.
We went over
Question.
Yeah, there you
Yeah, we do. It's in the environment, around that place.
So she's gonna jump in. She does. Yeah, no problem. Try to do all these, put it in, just throw resources out there. Yeah, if the judge happens to be looking at you when you don't do well, that's what, that's a favorite number.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so last year's for the whole city, I'm walking through the call
Oh, oh, that's funny. You are lucky, you only that.
That's the thing about this sport. This sport's even deep and stuff. There's a couple of plays. That's, you got one big play. That's it. This one's just fine. Yeah. So we look at yeah. I look green, I look like brown and white. Well, that's the thing, because I can't find a St. Clair shore or a St. Clair or anywhere else in the world. It's salt. Well, I would definitely go to Michigan, I just, that's my number. I'm saving up $1 million for fuel. Pull up next to, here and say we're here. Let's go. Well, the pier, you can call it, there's two areas. You can pull into the river and then let you into the beach area there. But if you go to the pier, I don't think it's first come, first served, lakeside of it. We call it north end where the pier ends. There's some private ones there. So, that much. We probably stay. Start having that. Because you know, it's just a lot. You don't want to go out there. You don't want to go too far from shore because then you're too far from in. So you just gotta watch the where's gas. And the thing is you try to roll as light as you can. I get 275 now, but try to keep it at a quarter and a half to each. But you might as well just pour the gas out into the water and keep burning it at such a rate because it's late. You want to stay up. So you'll do multiple stops with gas just so you get better. And it's huge difference. So, thinking about this next scenario, like, they're like, I never feel this, because it's just wasting my time. Pour it out into the lake.
So I don't know.
Oh, we can. Trip to Chicago. Here, not yet. There's no, well, they've got electric ones now, but I don't, for the price you pick for the bus, I'll pay for that. An alternative. Now I'm good. Go. Live in something you don't see. I like to say anything she wants, but catch it. It's definitely therapeutic. Just look around. Show the tongue going. Come back later. So what are you at this meeting for? I was gonna say it if you didn't say it. I'm trying to come back. I was on for about 8 years before. 2 years. That's not comfortable. Yeah. Listen, the last 4 years of my terms were like 20. So, right, John?
Any correct?
This. It's hard to make changes. I love to go and make changes. What's that? It doesn't take 4 hours to sit. I was there.
No, I think you have to make a decision, and then
Yeah.
they would change their minds.
Yeah.
No, we just discuss it, make a decision. That's why. Good, good, final. We had a great battle.
would be good for about 26 schools.
So what is the youth school board? Oh, okay. So why should I vote for you?
Why should you go?
Are you guys in the same boat or are you opposites?
I don't think those are practical. No. I'm probably in the boat. I take, my opinion is this, I try to keep this and that out of it because it's about kids. And they're not there. And it's either right or it's wrong for kids. That's kind of my role. I don't pretend to be the expert on what's right or wrong for kids, but collaboratively we come to a decision. That's, if I had to say,
There's one more
for
question
me
I
to
ask
ask.
that'll like set the markers. Should there be tampons in those?
So you've immediately brought some of the harshest politics there is. Yes. There's laws that keep you from being able to do what you might feel you should.
Really?
Well, they have rights, everyone has rights. You're not gonna take rights away from one and give it to the other. And
So my building, my office building in Ann Arbor.
Oh, I know, but
I go in.
I build
They have
buildings.
the envelope, and that's what we're trying.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is they're complying with what they think they need to do
But
for,
there's-
and most of that stuff never gets used.
There's one of those bathrooms in Ann Arbor.
I
So it's that building. So I actually.
I will
I
see,
use the building job in the next month.
just
They don't.
make sure.
I will say this. Greg, great superintendent, Greg. He came, because this was coming a long time ago. And they saw the writing on the wall, what was happening. And his plan was, the sex bathrooms all over that, all over. So you'll notice that we have private family bathrooms all over the district.
I know about that.
And in my opinion, I'm a tradesman, so I can catch some of the shades and what the guys said. But, go in there, do what you want to do.
That's what, that's actually.
I absolutely, no, that should, you should,
More of it,
they just had that whole thing, it was going crazy on, but it turned out years ago. But, with extra X and Y chromosomes.
Oh, the doctor?
The what?
The doctor?
Yeah.
She's actually.
She's a, and, but the thing is, so here's, I believe when it comes to sports, all we're competing together. Now, if you're gonna go, and here's what I'll say, okay, if you need the ability to do that, then go make the complete change and come back with a birth certificate that was changed, and then you have a chance. But none of them are gonna do that. No, I agree. I believe that too, but see, and my draft goes with this, because I firmly believe that that's not our decision. It's the decision of the people that run the sports. The school board is up here, we're supposed to be on every kid's side. We're supposed to defend and get them safe to wherever they need to be. If they come, Here's an example.
I would say that my daughter.
No, I,
Plays in whatever sport.
Yeah.
And there's male,
no, it's,
like basketball.
no, I totally agree with you. I'm going beyond the sport. I'm going beyond the sport because we deal with it up there and we will deal with it up there. It will come to the table at some point, probably more so now than ever. And you're gonna have to know what we have, pardon?
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah, and that's, and you will, it's easy to say this is where I stand on it, and then something is different about one, and you go, okay, I see what we got here. And you're gonna have to compromise and rely on the rest of your board members to do it, because it's not easy to do all the time.
I just disagree. I think it's very simple.
And that's fine.
I think.
Belief in something, then you have to believe it. And some
No,
people might not agree with you, and that's okay. But I understand, I'm gonna die on this hill, my girls should not be doing this.
No, well, and where sports are involved, that's where I stand, unless you prove that you changed your entire body to do it. Not to worry about it.
Well, according to the, it's all according.
Actually, yeah, what is right is substantial. I don't know.
We don't know, right? It's, I mean, it's-
Next week, but, you know, it's literally.
enough that they will buy it. Tell them to.
Third one.
And then you gotta find a doctor that will say that you've changed. Because once they come with a birth certificate, that's the point. Now it's out of your legal ability to say.
Chances of. That's what it is. That did. Yes. So.
Well, one of the biggest things. Right, actually. That's. I don't think it is, and it's even better for. But it's, those are the things that. It's what we as we saw with COVID, I feel like I got knowledge after the fact. And with all these and you're aware of
So all I'm looking to do, go and commit to. I feel that.
I was thankful.
Right.
That was the vote that took this out of hands. So
Well, I'll
back into in person. Here's the thing, and I can tell you what happened in a nutshell. First off, there's a bunch of people on an island, a country across the ocean that are wearing full oxygen outfits. So something's going on. What is it? We don't know, and I'm not gonna take liability on for every kid in this district. The safest thing to do is do whatever they tell us to do until we figure this thing out. And that's exactly what we did. Then, as it progressed, we kept watching the numbers and making changes and trying to, because you can walk through the high school and the chin is not where the breathing comes, but it's where they were being more, or up here, that's a religious thing, so I don't know what they're doing. But, so we knew that wasn't happening, so with Roger brought to the table and said, what is it, let's get some statistics together as to districts that are doing what we're doing, versus the ones that aren't wearing masks, and who's doing better. And it was like 1.5% difference, either way, and depending on who you were looking at. And so we're like, well, what we're doing isn't doing anything better than what they're not. So that's when we said, all right, let's get back. So we took steps into it, got back, gave people the opportunity to do whatever they wanted to do. And the numbers really never got any worse than anybody else's. It was just going to take its course from there. And you can't tell kids to something on their mouth to say it. So, literally. so it kind of, none of us were prepared for it. It happened really fast. A bunch of emergency meetings that went till 4 in the morning sometimes. And the problem is, you don't even get much time to think about it because immediately people are standing up here screaming at you one way or the other. Lawsuits against a bunch of us, personal threats in our lives.
That's why I say,
All kinds of
I
things.
think,
I think we did the best we could. And we were all thinking, I don't think for the most part, we weren't thinking left or right, we were thinking whatever. So it was different. Yes. Yeah. That's what we had choices. I think we learned, there are some good things that came out of it. We learned that we have options to do different things. Look what I did to meetings at work. Good Lord, hey, I have a camera on my head now. I can walk all over and do a whole story on the building. I'm not, because we sit in the office. Pardon? Yeah. Yeah, I'm superintendent, so I don't have that option, but I'd like to get that. But I'm in the wrong business to do that. Pardon? Oh, no, I'm just saying, yeah, it's, but, and also social butterfly, I hate.
I just go to the town. I talk to you.
Yeah.
I'm just having to play the role.
But John was a huge target.
It's funny, like, not being first here, I just, I'm reading most of them not. And it's always. Not perfect, not maybe we did it, but it's not. I think we should do it our way. I won't, and,
You don't have to do that. No, and I'm not asking anybody to do that. I probably, personally put myself there, and it's because of my experiences, but being in the middle sucks. Because I understand both sides, and see where both sides come from, and I still need to see. And I try to go with the heart. But I have lots of life experiences with all that stuff, and feel for both sides. Parents are it's easy to say, how would that, you don't ask for those kids are stupid.
so add to that.
Oh, I know, well, that's where your parenting skills need to be primed to the nth degree, and I don't want to know.
If you're in England, they might take you in.
You want to? But that's where I live. I was trying to find
one person. That's a very good. But I also understand.
everybody gets help a different hand, you know, and sometimes you gotta think about their hand and, okay, what can we do?
All right, so.
Well, yeah, that's, yeah, I don't understand it. I'm trying to, set it to, because I can't understand. I look just as much as I can't understand what it's like to be one. I can't understand any of those thoughts either. I've always been me. And so, I grapple with it, because I do worry about, the person's side. And usually comes around to about the same thing that everybody's gonna do, but there's a lot of arguing and talking. Thinking through. I just do. I think through a lot. I think through too much things. But now when it comes to my job, I'm
Who you on the board?
Pardon?
Who unseated you on the board?
Well, I didn't spend any money. I used my old signs, and everyone was spending $16,000 and $12,000 and $14,000 for all that stuff, and I only lost about $140. So I didn't feel too bad about that. Pardon? It was 2 years ago. So Jennifer got and who else? Andy got. Yep. And that's it, because it was, no, there was three. Angela got back. Yeah, we were. So those three.
This year, she's,
Roger. They're not running.
Yeah, I mean, that's just
I came in, I was elected first. I was a steering chair for the, Yes for BAS campaign. And then, what was it? That took 2 years. No, 2 years. Yeah, it took 2 years, because we didn't pass it the first time. We lost by 500 votes, and then we passed it by 3, second time. But, so I did that, and that was the 3 stadiums, if you will, the soccer fields, the tennis courts, the swimming pool. So I did go to schools and hospitals and gyms. So that was my forte. I came here, Greg had got here just before me, and I came here thinking, we were in Hornet, which is nice of people. That was one of the nicest in the district. And, I thought, well, schools are great. What the hell's with this football field and baseball back? So
I played on football.
the mud ball.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Just fun.
so I was thinking they needed an athletic booster club or something. So I started talking about that, and Greg heard about it, and he came and said, "You're Ken Stahl?" He's like, "Yeah, I can show you the rest of the place." And that was my first. My kids were young. I came here from Warren area, and I had seen the football field. I had seen the duct tape holding water in the pool and that good stuff. And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. What are we gonna do about this?" And he goes, "You ever heard a word about it?" And it's like, change. He educated me real quick. And I said, "Sure, I'll be your very." Did it. I said, "I have 2 jobs." And then actual course is everyone tells me what I do about too. So I started, stopping up. And it took me 2 times to get out the first time. That's 8 years. And then lost. And I firmly believe that you need to stay in this game. If you're coming from outside, and you just want to be on board, because I feel that's for parents. That's just my personal belief. If you don't have a kid, you can go up. And I have a kid left, and once he's up, because somebody else needs to step up and get involved with their kids. And that's my personal belief. Absolutely. You're probably there for more of the right reasons than somebody who might just be coming here with just political reasons. But, There's anything wrong with that, but that's just my feeling. I think you need to be part of this. I don't want I've got some good friends that never had kids, and I wouldn't want them on my school board because they'll change everything just because they want kids. And you better at least like kids if you're going to this board.
Well, there's things that you can't.
Probably not. Why do this? Come on, what are you talking about? Sir.
It was nice meeting you.
Same here.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you, Ruby's mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's
your name?
Nathan's dad.
Mr. Thompson.
Kevin.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Always.
Yeah, stay in touch, you know, yep. Yeah, just got to go from our, just got to go actually. Yeah.
Caesar?
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
See you.
Yeah. Oh, I talked to him. Who was it? No, that's which one was it? Yeah. I haven't spoken to him, the guy called Bill's clerk. More home. Yeah, graduated from Brighton, had kids. Private school. Private school up here in Pittsburgh. Is a little precedent. Private school first, going there. Came back here recently, so it was something like that. Or maybe it was sooner. He just, I said, and I asked him a question. I'm like, don't let me ask him, what's your stake in the game? Why do you want to be here? Because you're telling me you're not a kid. And you didn't really you graduated, but you didn't put your kids in the one you graduated from. So what is your stake? And he goes, well, he says, I feel like my job's with Chrysler and I'm teaching at state. Apparently he's like one of those team guys that gets everybody together, gets everybody talking, you know, collaborating. So that I can tell you that that's a bad thing. I'm going to tell you, I don't like you because that's the reason you're here. I'm just going to tell you I'm like somebody that is one of the states that graduated here. Someone else said, I would never say anything bad about you. I don't know you. We just met to 37. And I said, that's just me. I said, a lot of people won't care about that. You seem like a nice guy, and I said, we should have coffee. And I said, you're not supposed to know exactly the same. Yeah, I mean, it's about compromise. It's about compromise and changing your mind. You're changing your mind, you're not listening. So who was the teacher, one of the teachers, graduation, she graduated that, whatever. Who was the speaker? He was retiring that year, he said, quoted some great person, just like he said, what he said to me is, you never change your mind, you never listen. That's it. And that was stuck in my head, and I love that man for saying that, because that's exactly how I think. Like, change my mind, I'm open, I'm literally open to being changed. And you'll at least give me a different perspective. Maybe that change what I think. I don't know. That's where we're headed about anyway. It's not, that's too straightforward. And some things, so I'm changing my mind. Personal experience. But I'm always open for trying to. It's like you, makes this job. Don't know how to say this. It's still cool.
I think there's certain.
Oh, no, I didn't. This should. In order to. Whether or not we're going to post, I'm not gonna, my first goal was to go online. And being brave. And I said, that's fine, you know, you can give my vote, but you got my help, so. You gotta do what you want. I know it's supposed to be sad, I know it's supposed to be bad, whatever you're doing, help them get. It's selfish, actually. I want to be able to know that whether I voted for them or against them, I'm still part of this team. That's it. It's what that we always sure mouse guy. No, I don't care. What's that? Oh, hold on. I already called that. I'm doing it. No, you know, most of what was supposed to happen. I know exactly what it would cost, and I know you're going to do it. All right, then I take the first. If elected, 2 weeks are going to do it. I think it's more like 4 or 5, because that's your whole seat, the insulation, it's just a basic, it's just a basic box. We talked about it. That's up there, suck it out, go open the doors, and then you got to open the doors, which nobody likes to do, especially in today's environment. So. Baseball practice, basketball, they're running. Always happening. How many people are doing more bodies? It's just hot. It doesn't matter what time of year it is. Alright.
I was curious.
Listen. Not making, that's what I'm saying. Just straight this up. And it's about the size of our gymnasium, maybe, which is just, you just let me take care of it. I know, we used to walk uphill all the way to the bathroom and everything else, but whatever, I'm old. Plus, we have enough insurance. You know?
That's what I think, all I have to do is sit there and sweat.
That's the hard part. Have you seen my boy at home sweat? You can fill his jug of water with his sweat every hour. Apparently that's healthy. We met Alicia Irving. We went from foes to improve the relationship since our first round. will say, tomorrow. She's really glad that she's good at it. She'll tell you. Because it's funny, because some people will bring some sanity to it. So if anybody ever told me, the words were ever told me that I would be considered a sane person up here, that she's not like laughing right now. Nobody would. She's her knowledge is very. She's never going to change right to the charter school. She just that's her career. That's what she does. And private school isn't forever. I don't know that. Some kids need something different. That's what we get. I don't like the fact that water sits down. We're not going to do this business in because those kids are going to go somewhere. That's where they try to go from them. Can't all be here, can't all be great. Yep. Well, she took her one kid to Hawaii, right? Did well, a lot of people do that. A lot of people from here and there. There's a lot of people in the district that go to a private school and bring them to high school. So, it's one way to do it. It's always 50% of it. It's just
I think we're probably.
yeah. Oh, yeah. We steal from a lot of districts. People will testify to that. And do stuff on them too. Too many comments. It's some. District wise? Right. Yes, up high. Yeah. Can't get rid of us that easy.
What's your presentation of right now?
I got nothing better. Do I bring my computer up to the stands to right here tomorrow, or go over here?
But it's just like with our airplane.
So do you have a reference? You want me to or you want me to do it from here?
Over here is nice. From the.
Yeah. Okay, but I go from right. So I'll put it up right now, so even if they do, that's why I was saying to do the action first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Chillers for the high school, you want to.
Yeah. They've been going in and out a little bit here. Didn't you know that that's why they do that on purpose? That's like I do.
Jake's doing it because he's going to do his presentation. So he's logging in. I turned it back on, yeah. Yep.
All right,
Still live though, right?
Still live.
okay. We are back in open session at this point.
Yes, I would like to make a motion that the board authorize our council to take action consistent with the discussion that was had in closed session.
Motion by Ms. Reed, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion?
One item related to closed session that I brought up at the beginning of the meeting, while we're on this item. I was able to talk to Dr. Outlaw during the recess when we went into closed session. And he confirmed that his update dated July 18th referenced a subject related to this closed session, which everyone knows July 18th was almost a month ago, a full month ago. Since that update, to my knowledge, there has not been any formal communication to this board regarding the subject that was related to why we went into closed session today. And everyone on this board knows, and I think many members of the public know, that the superintendent is not able to call the board into closed session. So I would just ask in the future, if we as a board go into closed session, that we identify or designate someone who will communicate on behalf of the board once the executive committee decides to set closed session, that the entire board is made aware of why we are going into closed session, so we go into that session with clear understanding and awareness amongst the board. And so I just wanted to ask for that and see how other members of this board felt.
Thank you, Mr. Storm. I think that's a very fair ask from the executive committee, and as a member of the executive committee, I will do my best to ensure that that information is shared more effectively.
Thank you.
I would concur with that. And to add to that, I would also, as another layer, as the agenda comes out, and if any board member, despite best efforts or lack thereof, to make that communication, and the board member is unaware or has any questions regarding the topic of a closed session, by all means, call me, text me. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody about that topic as the agenda comes out. Okay, so we have a motion. It's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. All right. That moves us now to, so we did have the, at this point, we had the tabling of the motion to amend. Mr. Connolly, do you still wish to proceed forward with that motion or
No, at
withdraw?
this time, I'd like to withdraw the motion regarding the reimbursement for parents.
All right. All right, then that moves us to item 8, Title IX update. Mr. Anastasov.
This mic is always on, right? Okay. All right, so I want to take an opportunity to update just on Title IX, not only to give kind of a quick update of our structure, but between going to highlight items such as the Miller-Johnson report and some of the recommendations. Also, there has been some changes or recommendations for changes lately from the federal level as well. So we're going to kind of give kind of a broad overview of that and kind of what the future will bring for Title IX in general or for the Brighton area schools. So these are our topic areas, and we'll cover each one of those as we go through, but we're going to start out with the Brighton structure. So just to give you an idea, I think it's important not only for you as a board, but our district as a whole. So obviously our district will be notified on at least a yearly basis of these individuals and the roles that they play. To start out, the Title IX coordinators are served by myself and Michelle Allison, our special ed director. It is distinguished as that in the board policy. It doesn't give our names in the board policy, but it does say Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources and Director of Special Education. And so obviously these are two individuals that serve in those roles. So we are the Title IX coordinators. These are probably the most important names for our staff to know, because as mandatory reporters, they are obligated, if a situation comes up, to make sure to report that information to us as the Title IX coordinators, or they may go through their principals who get it to us, but it has to end up in our hands if there is a potential issue or if a complaint comes through. So that's number one positions for our staff in general to know. The other ones are not as important for them to know, but as good resources. As different other roles as the Title IX process, there is the investigator. So that will either be myself and Michelle Allison as well. However, though, depending on the situation, it could be principals, directors, SROs, a combination of, or again, depending on the situation, it could be our district's legal team as well. So we have to look at each situation and figure out what is the best way to move forward. And that is a decision we'll make of who is going to move forward as our investigator for that. So these are our options. And as we discuss it as a team, we can narrow down what we want to use each time, except for it can be done on a case-by-case basis. Decision makers, same thing. Michelle, Allison, and I can serve as a decision maker, or we could with our legal team, depending on the situation. However, usually we will, even though the new law does state that you can have one individual go throughout all of this, so I could be the coordinator, investigator, and decision maker. From my recommendation, it is probably good that if I was serving as the Title IX coordinator, we may have somebody separate be the decision maker. Even though Title IX coordinator stays within a non-biased role, it's still, they're privy to more of the information along the way. So that's where Michelle Allison and I can share in that responsibility.
Can I ask a quick
Yeah.
question? Under our existing policy, would somebody be able to act as both the Title IX coordinator and an investigator, or do those roles have to remain separate as well?
Under the new laws, you can have, and I forget the exact name, but you can have one person serve as those first three if you wanted to, but it's not always in the best case of the district for you to go about that role, but they cannot.
What we have, our existing policies are not under the newly proposed federal regulations. Our existing policies would not have that accommodation.
Right, and those, I don't think our existing policies specify one way or the other that they have to be separate from the coordinator. It just says the district has to assign it. I will look at that and see if there is a specification that says it's not. But as I said, we wouldn't probably recommend that anyways moving forward. It does say, however, whoever serves in the Title IX coordinator role or decision maker role or investigator cannot serve as the appeals officer, which makes sense because obviously that only occurs when the decision maker does make the decision based on the report from the investigator. Whatever decision's made, if the individual who made the complaint disagrees with it, they can file an appeal and it will go to a separate person. So right now we have to find this again. It could be legal team, but as Dave Jones, who has experience in the Title IX process before as a Title IX coordinator, as a appeals officer, even decision maker. And so that could be a role that again, these could change because we'll assign them at the beginning of the process, but this is our plan of action at this point. And again, it doesn't specify in the board language who is in that position. Just the Title IX coordinators have to be specified in our board policy.
Can I ask just a quick question, Jacob? As it relates to appeals, what would be an example of an appeals? And I don't want to ask a rhetorical question. I guess what I'm kind of poking at is you and Dave work together in the administration of our superintendent daily, correct?
Correct.
Your colleagues, peers. If my child is involved in a Title IX situation and an investigation is initiated by you, and I disagree with the way the investigation or case was handled, is this suggesting that I would appeal to your peer who is underneath the reports to the superintendent? Is that what that's suggesting?
I mean, right now, the way that's written, yeah, because the appeals officer, and I understand what you're saying, I think you're talking about an implicit bias or whatever that could be there based on the colleagues. The appeals officer will stay out of, obviously, the investigation, the process until it gets to that point. But that's where we look at it case-by-case basis. If we decide that there is any or possibility of a bias, it could be assigned to somebody else, such as like a legal team representative of sorts. So that is taken into account, except for from our roles. there is an understanding we stay non-biased in that process, even though I do understand what you're saying.
So, I mean, you can appreciate as putting my parent hat on, my board member and my parent hat on, but a member of the public, they're involved in a Title IX situation that involves an employee of the district. The investigator that initiates the investigation works for the superintendent. And when I, the parent, go through the process and disagree with something that happened, the suggestion is I'm going to appeal to your peer, who is also a direct report of the superintendent, an employee of this district.
That's the way that at least our recommendation's set up right now. However, the law does state the Title IX coordinator is the only one who has to be an employee of the district. So we can assign investigators, decision makers, appeals officers outside of the district employees as well, if it's in the best interest of that case. So we do have the flexibility to be able to do that. It just depends on if that's in the best interest of that case or that individual.
Two attorneys on our board would, in the case where a Title IX situation involves a district employee, would this be deemed a conflict of interest where the investigator and the appeals officer work together day to day and are a part of the same team that reports to the superintendent of the district?
So I want to answer that just with some of the history of some of the discussions that we had in the past at the policy committee level, and some of the things that we'd heard from the policy council over the years. Because like you, I felt that the value of the appeals process from the parent's perspective or the student's perspective is entirely in how independent you think that appeals officer is from the underlying decision. And we had talked to our policy council. I think we originally proposed this when we still had Neola, and then we actually adopted something with our Neola policies that included an appeals committee of the board. We had written it so that we would have 3 members of the board acting as an appeals committee, and our counselors or whoever, our relationship manager at Neola, talked with the lawyers at Neola. They could get comfortable with that. They wrote it for us, or they helped us write it. And I think that's what the board adopted under our old policy regime. When we switched to Troon and raised questions with them about whether we should continue that structure, and this is before the most recent regulations were even proposed, right? Because it's been, 3-4 years now since we switched to Troon, I think. Council, or the team that manages the policy book at Troon, said that nobody else does it that way because their board members do not get enough training on Title IX issues to be competent appeals officers, and that the school district would be creating an additional layer of risk and liability in doing that. So we pulled that out and went with the language that we have today, which allows us to have another assistant superintendent as the appeals officer, or to appoint somebody on our legal team to be an appeals officer. It's allowable. It's more
I do not
allowable. I
want
think that's
to get
what-
anywhere near Title IX appeal process as a board member. That wasn't the basis of my question. I'm personally not interested in getting anywhere near it. But I do feel strongly that, the very definition of a conflict of interest would be 2 direct reports of a superintendent. One is an investigator, one is the appeals officer. How far is your office away from Dave when you're both working in the office?
Yeah, they're across the hall, right?
Across the hall.
Right across the hall from each other.
No, I
And
understand.
so my suggestion would be, we as a board, if this is being presented to us to, bless, agree to, that the appeals officer should not be a district employee. Like I would advocate for us hiring independent third-party legal counsel that's not Troon to serve as our representative in that appeals process and someone who is qualified to handle Title IX appeals.
Yeah, and that's definitely a possibility that the state gives depending on the direction that the board wants to go. And that's why they offer that as a possibility based on what the board feels.
So that is a
comfortable with.
possibility.
Of having, of hiring legal counsel for those roles. Yeah, and any of those roles other than coordinator.
I don't want to take away from the other time that, or the other information that Jacob wants to share tonight, but I think that's something that we can pick around the policy committee and see what other districts are doing.
Why
for
does
them.
that have to go to the policy committee?
Well,
Like, I-
because we don't have any draft policy for us to approve tonight. That's not what Jacob's doing. So this is the way it is today. I don't know about you, but I would want to see the red lines before I voted on it.
So
would
I
like
guess,
to see
so
language,
just in the spirit
right?
of if in fact this needs to go back to the policy committee, all I am suggesting is that when a Title IX case is appealed, third-party legal counsel that is independent, truly independent. Trune is not independent. Trune is our legal counsel. So independent third-party legal counsel serves as the appeals board for a Title IX appeal. I don't know how much policy debate and discussion needs to be had. To me, it's we either agree or we don't agree. And if we agree, Jacob can make it happen.
Our policy right now allows us, the district, to select someone that is not a district employee to act as the appeals officer.
It allows those options.
Our policy does not say that it will always be. So that is the change that you're asking for.
It is.
That I would ask us to see redlined and then to talk to our policy council about, what that does to the compliance guarantees that they give us when they write the policies before, so that the board can have that information before the board votes on it. That's
Thoughts from others?
Well, yeah, because Andy, I hear exactly what you're saying here, and I know, Jacob, you mentioned earlier that we have the ability to go out to a third party, right? And I think that's what okay. But who ultimately makes that decision to go to a third party? Does it come to the board to vote on that we go? Is that your decision? Is that the policy committee decision? Because I could see this turning into a big mess if the person that filed it says, well, that's that, and you're saying, no, it's great, and this is what we're gonna do. Okay, you want it? Oh, well, we'll go to this person then.
Yeah, and according to
How
the board,
objective is that?
according to the board's policy and the law, right now with the way that it's written, it does provide us with the opportunity to make that decision of who we go out to and those
And
kinds of
it's your
things.
decision. That has nothing to do with the person that files the suit or anything else that has any discussion. It's up to the school
Correct,
district
yeah.
to make that decision.
Yeah, by the word,
So
by
what-
my understanding of the law, yeah.
I mean, what I would suggest is part of the conversation that may take place at the policy committee level, if we solicit information from Trune, if we are going to change our policy to mandate that it be outside. One of the things I would like to understand is that I suspect, although I can't say this with any degree of certainty, that there are probably very few scenarios where there's actually an appeal that's involved. Because I believe under the law, once there's a decision, they can file a complaint then with the Department of Civil Rights. And it completely circumvents the appeal process.
There's other process you can go.
Right, exactly. And so if that is the typical route that these cases take, then what I would like feedback from Trune or whoever is there what are the pros and cons of designating like the legal team to be in that process versus somebody internal to the district, vis-a-vis how that process might unfold? I mean, I don't know that that conversation has been into the weeds to that degree, but that would be something that would, before we make a decision like, yeah, this is what we want to do, I think it would be good to get that feedback.
Yeah, we definitely have not had that conversation with Trune in the last couple of years, so it's a good question to have.
Yeah, and we can definitely add that to our agenda on that, absolutely. All right, so for quickly, recent law changes came into effect. So on April 29th, this is when the final regulations were actually published. They were released in different bases or whatever, and became effective August 1st, so 11 days ago or so. However, they are effective right now. There's multiple federal injunctions, but there is a specific one federal injunction that has our high school, our middle school, and Maltby are all fall under this injunction based on the language. So all that says is those 3 schools do not have, we do not have to comply to the new law changes based on those schools. However, because of the way the injunction is written, we do have to follow the changes in the law for every other school, because it's not by district, it's by individual school, the way that it's done. And so right now, that's the injunction we're under. Until it's released, the district can proceed differently. However, we're going to follow the injunction as set for those 3 districts, or sorry, 3 buildings. The scope of the federal changes, there's been multiple federal changes. The main group of them fall under 3 categories, which is the procedural requirements for responding to complaints have some slight differences, the way that mandated reporters respond to them as well. There's an expanded geographic area for off-campus conduct that even if it occurs off campus, the district still may be responsible for Title IX investigation or discipline, depending on the outcome. And then there's a broader definition of sex to include sexual orientation, gender identity, and pregnancy. So these are the main ones, especially the 3rd bullet, that were more the reasoning behind a lot of the federal injunctions around the country at this point.
So with the difference between the law that's currently applicable to the elementary schools versus our intermediate, middle, and high school, we're not going to be proceeding with any changes to board policy during the pendency of that injunction. That's right?
Correct. That would be actually probably a discussion for the policy committee, because according to legal, you can still move forward with policy change. And so it's a little,
We just wouldn't be applying the new
it wouldn't be
policy
applying it to those buildings at that time. So that's a discussion we had to, do we wait on the injunction? We still have to, for the other buildings, follow it, but whether it ends up in board policy or not is up to the district itself.
So I assume that your plan is that we're going to rely very heavily on legal counsel to the extent that we receive any Title IX complaints during this interim period.
And absolutely. Yep. And that's what everybody's been doing who have had any complaints since the changes have rolled out. They've relied on legal counsel for that.
I know that you have had some conversations with Troon about how we deal with policy updates while the lawsuit around the injunction is still pending. I would like maybe some more detail about the advantages and disadvantages of formally adopting something that is only applicable in certain buildings while leaving the existing policy in place, or whether we are legally protected if we are simply ensuring that we follow whichever set of laws are applicable to the building where the complaint arises, regardless of what the current status of our policies.
Yep. Yeah, we can absolutely get that.
Yeah, because I know, I mean, my preference would be not to update the policies in a way that the policy doesn't actually cover the entire district, because in my mind, the board policy is supposed to cover the entire district. So if we're not increasing liability and risk to the district by leaving the policies as is because they comply with prior law, and relying on legal counsel to the extent that we get complaints that would be subject to the new law, to make sure that we are following those rules if that circumstance arises. That, I mean, I would like to know if that's an option that the district has, so that we can put that back in front of the board when the board has to consider whether we're actually updating policy or not.
Yeah, we can definitely consult legal on that, which we should. All right, so for the Miller-Johnson title audit that we have, was released January 25th of this year. So there's multiple different recommendations in it, and it is in your board packets in full. So obviously this is just a summary of that. So there's a recommendation of Miller-Johnson for training, which is also a recommendation, well, not a recommendation, say a law that training has to occur within the district as a whole and within the different roles, the specific roles within Title IX. So we're currently working, also on top of that, we're currently working with Miller Johnson on some of those best practices, and the best practices that they highlighted within their document was the notice of the complaint, whether the entire concern or the complaint was addressed, and then the documentation that's kept during that time. So as we're specifically working with Miller Johnson on these to not only put these best practices in place, but make sure that we're aligning to the language that they put within the letter itself.
Just a quick question on this slide. What was the date on the letter from Miller Johnson?
Yeah, it was released on January 25th.
So it was
The
released
letter
on-
that was
on-
released at least to the
January 25th, and today is the 12th of August. From your perspective or Dr. Outlaw's perspective, what has actually been implemented? What changes have been implemented since the letter was published?
Yeah, so we're gonna go through on some of those slides there that address some of the changes and the training, different stuff that's coming from those. So some have been in place, some are being implemented as we go. So some of those, so the upcoming training, the training part of it it is required yearly for mandatory reporters, which is all of our staff members within the district. And so we're doing a full staff. Those will come from either Safe Schools modules, and because of some of the changes are specific modules released by legal counsel that can be used for this. We're also doing a Title IX overview training on August 23rd for our principals, directors, SROs, central office, anybody that could potentially be involved from mainly a lot of that group is an investigator standpoint. So we're asking the trainers not only to give an overview to make sure there's a good understanding of Title IX, but also to dive deeper into the investigative part if they were involved in either doing the investigation or more likely assisting in the investigation. And that's gonna be led by Sharun on that date. And then after that, ones like myself, Michelle, and Dave, at least at this point, pending the action of the board in the future, we're going to be also receiving additional training to continue to cover. Michelle Allison and I have already been trained on as coordinators, so we satisfied that, but we have additional questions we want to make sure that we cover. We also want, if there's additional questions we have on the decision-making role or on the appeal role. Every role needs specific training for that. Kind of as we put before, we want to make sure anybody we're putting in that roles has the proper training to be able to proceed. Even if we do utilize legal counsel in the future to assist us through that process, which we most likely will, we still have to have those training to identify when that need comes up. And then the Title IX changes, I just put ongoing on that. Obviously, Michelle and I follow that closely. Any updates that come to that, we make sure to not only become informed ourselves, but inform anybody else in the district that is in need of that training as well.
If I could just really quickly, I'm sorry, just on the timing, just so you know, the recommendation from Miller Johnson was they would not recommend doing the training until the regulations were released.
Right.
That's why they're this summer. They were not earlier.
So I asked a very simple question. What actions have been taken and what change has been implemented in this district since January of 2024? And when I asked the question, you and Dr. Outlaw pointed to the screen and said, next slide. And the title of this slide says upcoming training.
Yeah, that's the upcoming.
Which to me suggests it's in the future. And I'm looking at the dates that are in the future as well.
Right, because that's when that training was recommended. We do have, so as I go over these and I can add to these are some of the best practices and procedures that we're currently working on with Miller Johnson. So some of the immediate items that we have, because is the communication or the notification when potential Title IX comes up. So one item that I've been working with Miller Johnson and Sharun on is what do those notifications look like when potential Title IX issues arise? How do we communicate those? How do we start the process if necessary or not? Because part of the Title IX process is to make sure that both parties are aware of our Title IX procedure. We're not there as a district to say whether they should file a complaint or not. We're there to make them aware that this is their rights as students and parents, and then they can take that information to go further. So I've worked with our legal teams to establish a process for that to make sure that we're doing proper notification, getting proper documentation back, whether they decide to go forward with the complaint or not. All of the potential situations we've had this year, all of them have made the decision not to move forward with the complaint. They've all been situations that the parents may or may not thought of it fell under that, and ultimately, when given the information, decided not to move forward on the complaint for that. So we've worked on what that communication looked like, what that record keeping looks like. So that says that's the most, the furthest the steps had to go this year, total in sense that release.
So-
And then obviously we're working on some of these other ones.
So just to make sure we're clear then, so for that first bullet, that's work that it's certainly a work in progress as we refine things when laws change.
Right,
but
that's why it's a work right now,
the
yeah.
improvement in the process to ensure that the notifications are more fulsome for the parties
Yep.
involved is complete, except as it might need to change for change.
Right, and the review right now is based on any law changes, right? Is there any other, because there is some changes with how we're notified and mandatory reporting and those type of things. So we have to make sure that that's part of the review process as well. And these are always changing, but when new changes come from the law, we have to look at those. We're reviewing current templates. We have templates ourselves, some that were in existence, some that I've created. We have Miller Johnson templates recommendation that they have that we can make within ourselves. Again, we haven't had to use any of those templates beyond the steps that I've said, but we have working on what those will look like so that we have not only solid communication, but also systematic communication. So we're going throughout the proper and consistent procedure. And defining roles, we've already talked about that, but as we discussed at the board tonight, there may be modification to that, either to the policy or at least recommendations. So we'll continue to work on that as we're given information, recommendations, or policy changes. And then ensuring a swift and efficient timeline. That's been important. That's been into effect ever since I've been dealing with any of these. Right when we're notified, the principals have been excellent at notifying. Right when they're notified, they do their part, I do my part, to make sure that all parties understand exactly what their rights are. Because again, just because we see Title IX a lot of times this is the parents and students' first time at ever looking at our Title IX policy. So our goal is to make sure that they understand their rights behind it. So those were the changes and notification things that have been implemented since that time.
So, I mean, I guess to be frank, Jacob, I don't personally interpret what you have summarized here as changes, right? You are the human resource leader for this district. And any human resource leader in a public school, in the private sector, is tasked with doing what you have on this slide every day of the week, 365 days a year. Your job on behalf of this district is to ensure that not just Title IX, but employment policy, state guidelines that affect employees of this district are followed. And you know, and everyone in this public body knows, those policies and state law, they're constantly changing. We just had minimum wage change that came out from the state Supreme Court, PTO, guaranteed PTO. Human resource leaders are tasked with monitoring those changes every day that you work. So to me, this summary captures your job responsibility. It doesn't necessarily speak to specific changes that have been implemented in this district that are specific to the Title IX process.
These were the specific ones that were identified in the Miller Johnson letter
Yeah,
that
but
we have
what
identified.
changed? So reviewing the various current templates to align with law changes, boy, that sounds great. So you assessed current templates? Yes?
Yeah. well,
What
the noti-
templates
and
did you
procedures.
assess? So what templates did you assess?
I mean, notifications, email templates, and then beyond that, it would then be the process of when you're actually going into a Title IX investigation.
And did any of the templates change?
Based as some of the notifications have changed, yep, and the way that we've worded those. And then going into the Title IX, there's recommendations from Miller Johnson to use that more consistent language.
So you have a before template and an after template where we could see this is what was before and this is what was changed and implemented after, if we wanted to see what's changed?
Well, depending on some of them, whether there was based on the changes, whether there was an exact before or not, but we have the template of how we proceed on those communications and those procedures.
It says on the bottom, ensuring a swift and efficient timeline. Does this district have a documented timeline that's specific to handling Title IX cases?
We react, that basically, I mean, we have to stay within the timeline of the law. And so
If I
we
came
are,
in your office
we are
tomorrow
guided.
and said, I'd like to see the timeline that's referenced. It says ensuring a swift and efficient timeline. Could you show me a documented timeline that says the Brighton Area Schools standard for responding to a Title IX case? Here are all the milestones on a documented timeline. Do
We
you
don't
that?
have a
I would,
abbreviated timeline beyond what the board policy
yeah, I was gonna
states.
suggest
The board policy
policy
states a timeline and we stay within that or more efficient based on the situation, which follows the law of the timeline
So
we're
when you
given.
assessed a swift and efficient timeline, what changes did you suggest or did the team suggest based on the review with Miller Johnson to ensure a swift and efficient timeline?
So some of that is just procedural, where the administration gets the information, the timeline which they report it to us, how we communicate, myself communicates to parents, so to making sure that we're staying on task and not letting days or weeks go by before those
So
communications occur.
communicating with parents. So before the analysis, before the assessment was done, how did the district communicate with parents?
I didn't have a
And
timeline on
after,
before.
and after, what changes were made to improve communication with parents?
So I
That's
didn't
what I'm
have a
getting
time-
at.
I didn't have a timeline on before what the communication was. I just know that we're making sure to not only follow the law, but make sure.
So
we're
what
doing it
changed then?
Swiftly.
What documented change exists? If this was action taken by the district to improve our Title IX process, what was the before communication template with parents? And then what changed as a result of the letter from Miller that resulted in a changed, new and improved future template for communicating with parents? What changed?
Can I suggest, just on this, that I think there's some final tweaks that are going on because of the changes this summer. And they'll be completed before the school year begins.
Yeah.
We have that commitment that we give the full package of all communication. We can maybe have a before and after so that the board can review everything, like as far as the final documents, that you can see everything firsthand.
How about documentation? One that's near and dear to my heart is documentation of district employees that are involved in Title IX. Is there any reference in the slides to how the documentation guidelines have changed?
It's in the templates.
It's in the templates.
Right. I mean, it'll talk about, right, the procedures within the templates, the procedure you go through, which it also includes who is documented, who is not, who's part of the investigation, what gets recorded, those type of things. And it's part of the training as well. It'll be part of the training with Sherman.
I'm a parent of a child who's involved in a Title IX case. I call my child's principal and have a conversation after filing a Title IX complaint in this district. You're telling me today, there's language that speaks to that principal's requirement to document the interaction with Andy Storm when he calls regarding his child who's named in a Title IX complaint in this district?
I mean, we do have policy and
It's a
law that
simple
backs
question.
that.
Is
I don't know
that-
if we
is
have a
that spelled out?
specific document that
So it
is what
doesn't
you're
exist.
asking for.
I'm asking, is there specific change as a result of the letter where it called out documentation by district employees? I want to know what has changed. What are the requirements? I want to see what the requirements are. If I'm a parent and my child is involved in a Title IX situation, I file a complaint and then I call you and then I call the principal. I want to know, what is the expectation? So if this happens in the future, it's on record of what this district will provide to the parent of a child who's involved in this situation. Is that documented today?
So I think we've got
It's
two.
documented in the process.
If I could, I think you've got two different questions, Mr. Storm, if I'm understanding. You've got a question about the information that is delivered to the parents. And
Yep, the
I'm
template, the
expecting-
communication template.
I'm expecting that part of that is in the checklists that we're going to get, because some of those are templates for communications that are shared with parents. It might not be everything you're looking for, but I think it will tell you where the district is now more clearly than the slide does. And then I think the second question you're asking is about how we internally document the communications
Correct.
that are had.
Correct.
Right?
Spot on.
So that might not be covered in parent-facing checklists, but I'm curious if that's covered in the administrative-facing checklists for the investigators and the coordinators or maybe the training for the principals is.
That's one item we've been working on with Miller Johnson is there's two parts you said. Yeah, there's that outside timeline, but there's also the like administrative guidance documentation and stuff as well that we're working with them on producing that, which is not in its complete form yet, based on, like I said, some of the changes and getting that underway.
And my understanding from some of the conversations that we have had at the board table is that, especially around, it's similar to the conversations that we had around training, there was concern that if we made too many procedural changes or too many changes to the procedural guide pending finalization of federal regs, that we would just be scrapping them as soon as those regs became final. So that is part of why that work is not complete yet. Our council did not think that was a good idea.
Yeah, and that was part of why they said some of that in the letter to occur after the changes were
Nothing
made.
involved in any federal legislation right now, and there will be nothing in the future as it relates to federal legislation that impedes this district from being able to implement a basic documentation standard. We as a district absolutely have the ability, with the support of this board and with support from the administration and leadership of the administration, to implement a documentation standard that ensures when a parent has a child involved in a Title IX case, and that parent ultimately files an appeal, and there's an independent third party brought in to investigate what happened, that this district has a paper trail substantiating their position of all of the milestones that played out on that swift and efficient timeline that you reference. Saying I don't recall and not having any documentation won't suffice.
No, I don't disagree. with
So
what you're saying.
that is why when we were working with how to finalize these templates, we have Catherine Tracy from Miller Johnson who put these recommendations out there, working directly with Mr. Anastasov, because we didn't want to have any wiggle room with translation. She's working on it. Those will be finalized. They're going to be endorsed by the person who made the recommendation. She said she wants recommendations. She said, we're going to do templates. We need to have templates in order to have documentation. She is helping us with this. So it should match up with what her direction is, and we will share those when those are complete.
Terrific. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this part. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes the Title IX update. Moves us into for action. Item A, regular meeting minutes of July 8, 2024. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Reed, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any nays? That passes 7-0. Item B, Human Resources Report. Mr. Anastasov.
All right, so we have a report. There was an updated one that was left in your document, or left on your document in the closed session. So the only modification to this updated report is the addition of Emily, who goes by Molly Douglas, to Hawkins Elementary. So this was a recommendation from the principal, meeting would be those type of things that occurred after the HR report was made. So at this point, we are recommending the three individuals here, three teachers for new hire.
All right. Do we have a motion to approve the Human Resources Report as presented?
So moved.
Support. Moved by Ms. Reed, supported by Dr. Krebs. Any discussion?
One quick question. The ASL, Jacob,
Yes.
in the middle on the bottom, it says 0.8 FTE.
Yeah, so there's 6 hours within the high school. They usually teach 5 hours in one prep. They're teaching 4 hours with one prep. With the student count that we needed, we only needed 2.8 FTEs for ASL. We didn't need a full 3. And so that's why we put out for a 0.8 FTE for this position.
Thank you.
While we're on the personnel, when do we start negotiations for our employees? When does that start?
We'll have to talk about the specific months that would begin, but it's going to be in the second half of this year. The current contract expires, I believe, on June 30th. of 2025.
In which union, yeah, they're slightly different, but
Yeah,
at the fiscal year there, yep.
Yep.
So we're good through
spring.
25.
Yes, yep.
Thank you.
Dr. Krebs?
Ms. Douglas, a new classroom, or is this an existing classroom?
It's an existing classroom. So this was the reason for this vacancy is there was we had a 1.0 FTE at the JK level at Hawkins that became a job share, and two of our teachers actually became both 0.5s on that job share in JK, which left a vacancy at 4th grade. And that's why Emily Douglas was recommended for hire.
Do we have any other positions still?
We do currently, and that's one thing I would say, we have 3 known teaching positions still open because we did add because of student number, which is a good thing. But as we know, our elementaries continue to increase in student population. So we do have an increase in 1 JK at Hawkins and then 1 JK at Spencer. So those are both new hires. There is a positional change transfer in Hawkins, so that JK position becomes a 2nd grade, I believe, position, 2nd or 3rd grade that's being hired. And then at Spencer, there's a JK. And then we do have a Scranton special ed teacher position that was a recent resignation that we just got. We actually did some interviews already today, but that process being finalized. So I do hope and expect to bring 3 more new hires at the August 26th meeting.
Thank you.
At least for teachers. There's obviously other hiring going on as well, but those are the teachers.
Okay. All right, all those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. Moves us to item C, the gymnastics cooperative agreement between Brighton Area Schools and Howell Public Schools.
Thompson.
So moved. I'm sorry.
So I don't know, we need another presentation.
He's only sat here for what, 3 hours?
I don't want to steal his thunder.
Questions, I'm good.
I answered them last time.
All right, so do we have a motion to, okay, this supported by Mr. Connolly. Any discussion?
So I brought this up before, and I can't remember, maybe a year ago. But I mean, I think of John's schedule and the time and hours that he puts into this district. And, how could we come up with a way where in the future, something like this, it's quick, it's easy, it's not confrontational, or, where we could address this and allow him to go home to his family in like 10 minutes. Is there a way that we could do that? I ask that sincerely.
Yeah, no,
And it's not just for him, but like the Nick Castile comes in sometimes. I'd really like to suggest that we be considerate of our district employees when, situations like this arise. I mean, we went in a closed session for an hour and a half and he's still here. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of districts do that
Yes.
for this type of business.
Yes. Would love to do
It's
that.
very much more efficient.
Could we do that?
Yeah.
Is there support to
We've
do
talked
that?
about doing a consent agenda in the past, and it just never.
I would really like to
Legs.
suggest that.
Yeah.
Not for everything, but yeah.
Like I said, I want to roll into you guys, but I mean, it's the 90s for these guys.
Yeah.
But I think that's something we wouldn't want to roll into.
No, but I think that, being
For stuff like
conscious
this, though,
of
it's
who
like-
we're having stay to answer questions and front loading our meeting with those presentations and discussions is a good, we tried to do that with the closed session.
Right.
Yeah. I'm glad he's here because I'm getting them all primed here for, I have something to ask that it'll be helpful for you to be here regarding fundraising. So I'm glad you're still here.
All right. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any nays? That passes 7-0. That closes for action and moves us for future action. Item A, MASB delegates. We talked about this, I believe, at the last meeting, but we will need to designate our delegates along with a alternate. I believe last year Dr. Krebs was the designee and I was the alternate. She attended. So I don't know if you're willing to. This one is in Lansing. Yeah. No.
I thought it was going to Charter City.
You know what? I'm pretty sure it's in Lansing.
I'm pretty sure it's in Lansing. Yeah.
But I think
All right. Well, we'll when we deal with it next time. Yeah. Let us know.
Well, this does say, yeah, Lansing Center, October 21st.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so it is Lansing. All right, and that moves us then into item B. This is fundraising disclosure policy 2301. Was this what you wanted to raise?
I have an item to talk
Okay.
about.
So this is, as I understand it, this is in conjunction, Mr. Trombley, you will, at the next meeting, will be addressing your request for approval of the,
Third-party vendor to, and giving me permission to be a third-party vendor to them. Their football games.
okay.
And related to fundraising, I just wanted, I've mentioned this at prior board meetings, but I wanted to use a current example. I have many children involved in Brighton area schools, athletic programs at multiple levels. And most folks that attend these meetings regularly or listen online know I personally played high school football and college football, love the sport of football, would do anything possible to support Brighton football and the broader athletic program here. But the fundraising, I feel, as someone who loves the sport, has just gotten way out of hand and crazy. This is the summary email that went out to all of the Brighton area school football players and their parents to start the season, mandatory fall parent-player meetings. And it says, player contribution. As we've done in years past, we are collecting a contribution from each player to cover various season expenses that help keep our program running. We're destitute. We got a $4 million indoor stadium. We're destitute. JV and freshman player contribution is $37 and covers away game snacks, coaches' end-of-season gifts, and the end-of-season celebration. Varsity player contribution is $130 and covers weekly team dinners, team snacks and special events, senior banners, end-of-season coaches' gifts, varsity banquet setup, including player meal, and other player team-focused items as needed. It can be paid all at once or in installments. You can also pay the player contribution for any level using this online form. If you have multiple players, please fill out one form for each player. You can also pay in installments or bring a check or cash to the August parent meeting if you haven't already. Check with me or your level TSG if you're unsure whether or not you've paid. So that's one item.
Can I ask Andy, not to split hairs, but is that coming from the coach or is that from the boosters?
There's the email.
Okay.
Yeah. This is Hour-a-thon fundraiser details, Sunday, 8/11. Hello, BHS football families. Our annual Hour-a-thon fundraiser is scheduled on Sunday, 8/11 at 6 p.m. in the auxiliary gym. This fundraiser is for all levels, freshman, JV, and varsity. You can find more details in this flyer. Players should fill out the list on the flyer and bring it with them to the meeting on Sunday. The list will be returned to each player at the Hour-a-thon. So, the fundraiser is run by the same company that provides our Gold Card fundraiser that starts on Picture Day, 8/17. Players can select to opt out of this fundraiser and still support the program financially by submitting a check for $200 or more, in parentheses, made out to Brighton Football. Place the check in an envelope with Football Hour-a-thon opt-out, player name and player level on the front. Checks can be given to Lynn at your level TSG representative at the parent meeting on Sunday. You can also opt out via PayPal using the form on our website. There's an $8 non-refundable processing fee added to PayPal transactions. So if you look at what was sent recently to us board members regarding fundraising, Section H, extra fees by clubs, teams, and activities, it says this applies to the fees that are assessed to parents with students in extracurricular activities. Examples include athletic gear, team dinners, coaching specialist fees, etc. This is from our policy. The actual 1 hour, they have an attachment that came with the email for the 1 hour-a-thon, and it says, all we ask is that each parent guardian help their student gather 20 to 25 or more cell phone numbers of their biggest supporters, i.e. parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, older siblings, family, friends. Please have the phone numbers written on the attached call list, and they'll kindly send them a text message requesting money, where you can then send your money into our destitute Brighton High School football program. My question is, where does this stop? Like if someone wants to donate, has a genuine interest to donate, which we're fortunate in Brighton, lots of people in this community want to donate. Terrific. Why are parents, volunteers, students, players, like, where does this stop? When does it stop? We have a multi-million-dollar complex that rivals any college football stadium in this state, barring the Division I Big Ten schools. It's comparable to Central Michigan. Our weight room is, our facilities are. When does this stop?
Well, and we're not.
You know what,
even that
does everybody
good of a
know where
team.
this money is going? We're buying caps. So my son can run out onto a field, and if he's wearing a black uniform, he has a black cap on his helmet. And if they wear orange uniforms, Brighton Area Schools is going to give him an orange cap so he can put an orange cap on his head and match and look really cool on the
They want the
football field.
sponsors to pay for those.
It's crazy.
Well,
Where does it stop is my question.
That's part of why I asked. That's why I asked whether this is the coach or this is the boosters.
I honestly don't know.
There are certain aspects of that policy that apply to the coaches directly as opposed to the boosters. And I'm guessing, since that's coming from Lynn, that this is part of the boosters organization, but I would like some clarity on that. Because even the boosters are supposed to run certain aspects of their fundraising requests and their plans for the money through the district. So I would like to know whether this plan has
Do you know, John?
gone through the
Or is this-
appropriate
No,
policies and procedures, right?
I think I'm assuming these things are from booster groups.
I don't know what TSG is.
What's that?
Football has it.
There's parent support groups. Any fundraising that takes place from a 501c3 third party, they have to report, they still have to fill out the form. Our extra fee forms are for our teams, are directly for our team. So we'll have to look into the football. Thank you for bringing that forward. We'll talk about that part of that. But the extra fee forms, those are specific. We have jurisdiction, obviously, over our team and our employees. If the band boosters want to run a fundraiser and it's off campus and they want to collect emails or whatever it might be and whatever it might, phone numbers, they have the right to do that as a 501c3 organization. They're going to do it on campus. It has to be reported, and we have to go through that process.
Those
I got
are
it.
being conducted in the parent meeting, mandatory, by the way,
Right.
parent meeting of the football program in the gymnasium at Brighton.
Right. So we are rolling this out. Obviously, we put information out there. We have not met with the booster lead parents, kind of walk through some of those. So I think we have to go through and have some dialogue with our booster parents on this. We focus primarily on our employees at this point. Mr. Thompson has met with all head coaches. He's actually met with all coaches of all levels. He's gone through that. This communication has gone out to all employees. We have the fundraising policy. Every employee in the entire district will be verifying that they understand the policy that has been accepted by the Board of Education on June 10th. So we are rolling this out. Appreciate you letting us know that. But we have to have some dialogue with our booster groups. Some of these are formal 501c3s, like a band boosters. Other ones are a group of parents that say, we want to get orange caps because they look great and we want our kids to look good. It's hard to regulate parents doing things
I'm
on their
sorry,
own.
But you know what? I don't think you answered Andy's question. When is this going to stop? John Thompson, who's director of athletics, who controls the football teams and this kind of stuff, he's sitting right back here. What, like Andy asked the question.
No,
Other than talking to the boosters and laying out this plan, that should have been done a long time.
No, but when is it going to stop? I don't think it's going to stop. Parents want to, they want to invest in their kids' experience. They want to take money. They want their kids to get gear. They want their
Who's
kids.
authorizing them to do it?
Well, but I think
giving them permission?
I think the distinction.
In football in particular, there's over 100 kids that are on a football team, right?
Yeah.
And we all know, we've had this discussion before, in this community, there are people who can stroke very, very large checks to this district and to this athletic program broadly, there are also students in this district who, this is not mandatory. You don't need to donate $200 if you don't go to the fundraiser. It's not mandatory, you don't need to do it, but every one of those kids are gonna be there and they're all like.
And we'll see your playing time.
Well,
I think that's I think that is unfair. I think that is completely unfair.
Especially
Our,
for
our,
our
Mr.
football team
Thompson,
doesn't
he goes to bat every day for kids that don't have don't have the means. He fights for them every day. He has his entire career.
Say you didn't.
I'm just saying that I think our coaches have that spirit and whatnot. I think that people come from a great spot of including kids, of everybody being included. There's not kids out there they take care of people that can't do it. They have done that every day. I'm just saying.
I didn't say that.
And the parent groups, what are they doing it for? They're volunteering their time. They're trying to raise money so their kids can have special experiences.
What you
But can
insinuated
we
was
take
that,
it down a notch? I mean, because I think the point of the policies that we have adopted here at the board is to ensure that there is transparency for us as board members about the money that's being requested directly by our employees for things that are happening with our extracurricular teams, with our classrooms, so that we know what's going on in our buildings and we're accountable for that to people. And we've pulled all of the other folks that are conducting these activities on our campuses and with our students into some aspects of those policies so that, again, we as a board have transparency on that. And so parents like you, like me, like everybody up here who's been at some point are able to see what the money is going for so we can hold those folks accountable for it too. It's certainly not going to solve all of the problems. And I definitely think that there is information that we need to get that I think Dr. Outlaw and Mr. Thompson have nodded and said that they're going to get us about how this is going on so we can have some more answers about this particular answer. Because I want to make sure that everybody knows if there's a fundraiser going on that's through a booster group or through the parent volunteers for a team, they need to know what the ground rules are and what we expect, right? And that's a message that we can continue to refine, and I absolutely support doing that. But
So
we're not going to be able to stop it.
Unlimited? Like, there's no, nothing that guides how many fundraisers can be done?
We didn't set anything like that in the policy. I mean, what we asked for.
I'm not set the policy. I'm
No, I
saying as
know,
a
but
district,
as a board, we didn't set
How
that.
do we govern in the context of a throttle? How do we govern?
My expectation is that's what the approval process is, right? Like it's, if you've got and I think the place where we have the most control is when we're talking about our employees. So let's pretend that it's the coach of a team that said, I want $200 from every player. There's a process that coach has to go through to get the $200 per player fundraiser going and justify why they need it.
Yep.
And that has to run through our business office and Mr. Thompson to make sure that we're okay with that. That's, my expectation that I think the administration shares is that they're going to look at the budget we have as a district for that particular event or that building and say, hey, you shouldn't be asking parents to cough up $200 for XYZ because we're already paying for that in your budget. So, sorry.
Or if it's not in your budget, ask the guy at that table to put it in your budget.
Right, and sorry, that's not in the budget this year. That's something that should come out of our budget. You're going to have to plan for it for next year. You can't ask your parents for it.
but the reality is, philosophically, is you can do that and say, this year we're going to budget for this. You will always have boosters in every sport. Hold on, let me finish. That are going to say, well, we want to do this, right? And there's always another step. I mean, that's human nature. And it's the passion of the parents who are behind these kids and whatever it is, whether it's band, football, lacrosse, I mean, you name it, right? And so the question is, if we're going to philosophically say, we're not going to I don't think we can legally say boosters, these 501c3 boosters, you can't fundraise, okay? We can't control the type of fundraising, but if we approve something and they come back and say, well, we want to do another fundraiser, and correct me if I'm wrong, and if you're saying, I don't, it's too much. We've got a $4 million complex here. Are we going to philosophically put a cap on what fundraising can be done, or?
not
If-
for.
No, but
if
I'm
we
just-
are-
I'm
if we
quoting what he
send out
said.
an email, no matter who it's from, that says it's mandatory, it's a mandatory.
That's a different
meeting,
issue. I agree, I
and they
understand.
Set up shop in the gymnasium of Brighton High School.
Oh,
That-
no. We
that's-
should be able to
I
tell them
understand that.
It's right here.
Yeah.
Andy, it's right
And
here.
then my other thing was like, how do you truly, like, it's a runaway train. Like, how do you control the runaway train?
Here's,
Yeah,
here's what's up. You have parents that really have good intent. I mean, obviously, this is a great thing for the kids. They're promoting their school, which is great. But here it says right here, this fundraiser is run by the same company that provides our Gold Card fundraiser. Okay, now what this is a business entity that's organizing their parents to push this forward. This is not the parents, this is a group that they found that can help them organize to become more, we'll call it, to get more accomplished. Instead of some parent taking it on and pass it to the next parent and take it. So this group probably is what am I thinking? It will be there when the parents leave. Yeah, it's sustainable. It's going to stay there. And they're going to, and the next group of parents is going to use this group to push this forward. So that's what that is. And it says right here, same company. This is not the parents. This is the company they hired to do this and get those phone numbers. That's a pretty big deal. So I'll just pass it back to you, but that's what it says. But it says right here, Gold Card Fund, same operation. And so I think it is much. I think it's too much.
I wanted to just bring it to the team's attention.
agree.
And thank you.
100%.
Booster used Brighton's name, Brighton's facilities, Brighton everything, but not be accountable or not report, or we haven't talked to the boosters.
I mean, there's some of that we can't control, right? Like I can't stop people from using the name Brighton. It's
No,
where we
but our
live.
facilities,
But our
emails,
facilities, yes, and that's part of what
our
our
teams,
approval
our
process
names
is
of our
for.
teams, Brighton football. I mean, it's pretty much Brighton.
But we don't, I mean, I don't have a trademark on Brighton football. I don't know that we could get it, right? Like we can't stop folks from doing that.
Okay, so then why are they using our kids' mailing list then? That's part of Brighton?
I am